On the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft report of recommendations for the legislative session that will be presented to the Judicial Council. We'll hear more on the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft report of recommendations for this legislative session. One is here today on the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft report of recommendations for this legislative session. One is here today on the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft report of recommendations for this legislative session. On the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft report of recommendations for this legislative session. On the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft report of recommendations on the YouTube. Okay, so today we're going to have a business meeting which will talk about, in particular, the work of the Legislative Research Committee that has done a ton of work that is culminating into what is right now a draft urgent enough that we decided we ought to take some action in putting together a group of folks to look at that specific issue together. And what we did was convene a group of about 40 experts. Some of them were judges who hear juvenile justice and child welfare cases, leaders from state agencies like the FPS, HHHC, TJJD. We had lawyers, we had service providers, we had advocates, and we had parents and children with lived experience. The focus of the conversation really was about children without placement. You hear about these kids who are sleeping in offices and hotels because they have such high needs, and the placement for them is often quite difficult. So Judge Smith here did a marvelous job helping us plan this roundtable session that we had in June. He was a leader there as well as he was here, and he led this interactive discussion focusing on gaps and, of course, solutions. The recommendations that came out of that meeting really focused and fall into 4 different buckets. Number 1, expanding awareness of both the issue and available resources across systems. Training tools is number 2. 3, collaboration across systems. And 4, access. So for me, one of the biggest takeaways from that session at the roundtable was that each system seems to have funding. We can argue about whether it is sufficient funding or not, but there is a threshold funding in each system, and it seems to be the case that communication and collaboration is where things sometimes fall short, and that, of course, creates a risk that we have some children, often with the highest needs, falling through cracks. And so this is just a short summary of what was a really rich discussion. We are finalizing a written report that summarizes the meeting, the discussion, the proposals that might come out of that meeting. And so I invite you to look at that, which will be available on the JCMH and Children's Commission websites later this month. And so the question for me remains, where do we go from here? And so I'm happy to let you know that the roundtable and the report are just the first step in the right direction. We are going to continue the important work that came out of that really important meeting and convene in the fall to prioritize the various recommendations that came out of that meeting and convene a small working group to think about ways in which we might tackle the very highest priorities. Rose developed a video of the event, and so I just wanted to ask your indulgence as we watch her great work and also give you a bit more flavor for what this roundtable was like.
Rebecca Huddle, a justice on the Supreme Court of Texas. I'm honored to be the Deputy Liaison to the Judicial Commission on Mental Health and the Deputy Chair of the Texas Children's Commission.
I am Barbara Gerby. I'm a judge on the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and I'm co-chair of the Judicial Mental Health Commission.
I'm Justice Deborah Lehrman, Justice on the Supreme Court of Texas, and I also serve as the chair of the Permanent Commission on Children, Youth, and Families. 6 months ago, when we had our meeting, one of our meetings, the issue was raised how important the issue of mental health is with our children who are in our child protective service system.
Today is the first time we've ever had joint session of both of these commissions. It's historic because it just has never happened before. We brought experts in from all different kinds of substantive areas.
We realize with both commissions that there's overlap, and there's a lot of things that judges can do. Youth is our most important resource, and so with the crossover, and we can help each other.
We have state agencies, members of the judiciary, physicians, researchers, all kinds of expertise in-house today.
I think as a judge, when we're in court, we basically see snapshots of cases, but it's really the hard workers behind the scenes. And, a lot of times we don't know who those people are. So I think it's good for us to be here today to kind of learn the intersection between some of the mental health resources out there, as well as what the community resources are.
Discussions about what's not working and what's working is going to allow us to collaborate with each other in order to come up with solutions, not just talk, but actually walk the walk.
We began by identifying gaps in the systems, and the second part of the meeting is aimed at talking about solutions, and we're looking for data-driven, concrete specifics.
Long term, I think we really need to kind of prioritize what resources are out there, what additional ones we need, and obviously, is there money available to get resources for kids?
People are coming up with ideas about what should happen as a state to address children with mental health needs who are also involved in child welfare and juvenile justice. I know that based on those recommendations, we're going to come together again and we're going to come up with solutions, real-world solutions that are going to have an impact.
I hope that we can have more interplay with all of the agencies here.
We still have a lot more work to do, and we're going to get it done because now we brought everybody to the table, and we're going to hopefully make some changes that are needed. The sky's the limit when it comes to what more we can do together.
We have an unbelievable group of very, very experienced professionals who have done this for years, who know what the problems are, and are working together to try to come up with solutions that will really help all Texans throughout this state.
I feel hope. I feel like after the meeting today, we have time right now is our opportunity to take this moment and do something and take action. And I really feel like we will. I think it's going to happen.
So thank you again to Rose for putting that lovely video together. And I just want to ask Jamie Bernstein, do you have any other point you'd like? Jamie is the Executive Director of the Children's Commission, so welcome her. And she, along with Christy Taylor, did a yeoman's work in putting this roundtable together and putting the report together. And so I commend that report to you. And Jamie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, we were just so fortunate to have individuals with lived experience there to really inform and enrich the discussion, and we're committed to doing that going forward. And everything that Justice Huddle said that we do, plan to back this up with action and carry it forward. So thank you very much.
Judge Spisha, anything you want to add? You did a remarkable job getting the ball rolling and getting meaningful conversation going at that meeting.
Thank you very much. But the one thing I would say is we're always going to be short of resources. But bringing those 40 people together that work in this area, I think we started reducing the silos, because we can take care of every kid if we use all the resources we have. But a lot of times we get stuck in a silo trying to get it done, either in the DFPS system or the TPA system. And so I think a first step is everybody meeting each other and exchanging cards, because sometimes that's the most important thing that comes from it.
Well, thank you, Judge Spisha. Moving to the next item, Christy Taylor is not with us today. She couldn't be here, and so Molly Davis and Kaima Harris are stepping in her shoes, filling her shoes today. And so I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Justice Huddle, and good morning, everyone. We'd be remiss without thanking Michael Sipes, Rose McBride, and Patrick Passmore for being able to put this meeting together. So thank you to our other staff members who are not always visible. And next, I'd like to update you on the Forms Committee. As you may recall, Judge Dave Jan chaired the subcommittee that I staffed, where we discussed and developed about 60 standard forms that are related to mental health. From those forms, 7 were chosen to be reviewed by the Supreme Court Advisory Committee. The Supreme Court Rules Attorney, Jackie Domery, did an excellent job of revising the 7 forms to be easier to understand and more accessible for pro se defendants. The revised forms were discussed in the August 19th Supreme Court Advisory Committee meeting, kind of a meeting of super geniuses if you have never tuned in. And a recommendation was made to the Supreme Court to adopt a new rule of judicial administration that would prohibit a judge from rejecting these forms if they've been filled out substantially correct. And now you'll hear from our jurist in residence.
Well, before we do that, just a little bit about this. So the legislature asked us to come up with rules that could facilitate better engagement with people that have mental illness or intellectual and developmental disabilities. And this forms, and when you start talking about forms, everybody's eyes glaze over because, you know, who wants to work on forms? This forms subcommittee is really the carrier of that legislative charge. Because in particular, in connection with emergency detention, which is where the legislature wanted us to focus. And so the work that they did was not easy because there are a number of judges all across the state, probate judges in particular, that have specific forms for their locality. But that makes it very difficult for family members and self-represented people to obtain the necessary mental health warrant from a judge that they need. So when you say it's a form, you really don't do justice to all the work that came behind it to coalesce the various ideas that there were about what these forms should look like and that process. And to say that it passed through the Supreme Court Rules Advisory Committee, that is not an easy committee to get through in terms of, you know, their ability to shred. I've been on it for 20 years before I was the liaison to it, and it's headed by Chief Justice Heck, and they pretty much tear apart everything that comes across their desk. And you know, in a good way, to make things better, to make the best recommendations they can to the Supreme Court. Anyway, in connection with this, that you should have seen the light pen, very few edits, very few recommendations for changes. So it's a real testament to Judge Jan and everybody on his committee. It was a tremendous amount of work. And our view on this is that the JCMH will be sort of the keeper of these 7 court-approved, or not court-approved, but JCMH-approved forms. And so that as there are legislative changes, they can be updated and they'll be available, easily available to the public, which is our goal. Our goal is to have, you know, the substance of the information that's contained in a request for emergency detention heard, and it not be tripped up on sort of technical defects and problems with the form itself. So kudos to everybody who worked on that. And now I'll turn it over to Judge Specia, who's been working on another huge project, which is our long-range plan.
Thank you, Justice Bland. The day before our last commission meeting, we had a half-day long-term planning session in person, and we worked on the long-term planning and the future plan. During that half-day meeting, we agreed upon several things. That the underlying tenets of collaboration, education, and leadership still hold true, and that's where we started when we started the commission. We needed and we do need a concise vision statement, so we have drafted one and we're working on that. There are overarching principles that we should consider with every project. We developed a list of 12 overarching principles which allow us to reduce our strategic goals to fewer and more broad goals. We needed a strategic plan for the next 5 years, but we also need a yearly operational plan that includes much more detail and specific target dates for each project. The overarching goals, strategic plan, and yearly operational plan are being finalized and will be submitted to the JCMH Executive Committee for review. And then the plan will be shared with the Commission and the Collaborative Council for comment and approval beginning next year. Thank you for everyone that attended that meeting, and it was useful, and we're working on getting there. Molly?
Thank you, Judge Specia. And now our communications manager, Rose McBride, will give you an update on our marketing efforts for the upcoming Judicial Summit on Mental Health and other website updates. Rose?
We've been doing a lot of direct marketing for the summit. I've emailed a number of leaders in counties that we don't yet have registered for the summit. So I believe, as we told you last time, we are doing the whole Texas Challenge this year. So we're trying to get one representative from every single county to attend the summit. So this was where we first started back in May when we just opened registration. We didn't have very many counties, but now we're up to 153, which I believe is the most we've had so far. So we just have 101 to go. We've more than half, so that's exciting. But so I wanted to ask if any of you have colleagues or connections in any of these counties where we're trying to reach people to really fill in this map. I think it would be ambitious, but super awesome if we could do it in the next 2 months. So a new page has been added to our website as well. Under speaking engagements. So our staff has been speaking at a number of events, and so now we have a page where you can go and see a presentation summary of who spoke and the topic, the top points from each presentation, as well as like an agenda and where the conference was. So we're continuously updating this with talks we've given, so that's exciting. And then we also have some new navigation. So now if you go to our website you can, instead of just clicking on events, clicking on the summit, clicking on 2022, you can have this nifty go all the way here and just click on that directly. Also, a new Beyond the Bio is out, so that is where we talk to you all, collaborative council members and commissioners, and kind of get to know you beyond just your bio. So Judge Rita Knowles' Beyond the Bio just came out, so you can go check that one out. And I'm working on one. I just spoke with Beth Mitchell, so hers will be up soon. If you'd like to nominate one of your fellow commissioners or collaborative council members, you can email me directly, and I can give you my email during the break. Coming up, we are starting our video library, which is going to be very exciting. That is kind of some how-to videos on certain topics. Our first one is about mental health courts. So if you want to start one and you don't know where to begin, we are talking to Judge Elizabeth Beyer-Leonard and Judge Brent Carr, and they're explaining how they started their courts, Judge Carr in Tarrant County and Judge Leonard in Midland County. So 2 different size counties, showing that you can really do it anywhere. That'll be out on our social media sometime in October and our website. I always love hearing your success stories from your counties, so keep sending those to me and I'll post them on our social media. People really love to see them. They get a lot of engagement to see what everyone around the state is doing. Is Patrick here? Nope, we will skip Patrick for now. But I will pass things back to Molly, and yeah, thank you.
Rose also, on top of all of this other excellent work, collects press articles about mental health topics from across the state and emails those weekly. If you're interested in being added to that email list, let us know and we can include you on it. And she does a great job of kind of gathering and curating from all news sources across the state and sends it around every week.
Thank you, Justice Bland. We have only about 6 weeks until the summit. November seems like a long time away, but it is really just around the corner. And I want to ask my staff attorney, my co-staff attorney, Kama Harris, who has been working really, really hard on this event, to talk about what's coming up. Kama?
Oh, we got it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, especially for the seat change. That seems like an honor. So yes, I've been working on the summit this year. We have a fantastic lineup. We are completely maxed out for in-person seating at the summit. There's a wait list that is formed. I don't know how many we're going to get through on the wait list, but a wait list exists and you'll be notified if you are able to move to in-person. We have nearly 800 total registrants at this time, and as Rose told you earlier, attendees from 152 Texas counties are going to be there. We also have some out-of-state attendees. Specifically, there's going to be a group from Kentucky who is in the process of starting their own Judicial Commission on Mental Health. So that's really exciting, and you'll probably get some questions from them. The Summit Curriculum Committee also suggested that during lunch this year, we have an open networking lunch, but our tables will be labeled with different topics. So if you'd like to discuss that topics with other attendees and experts, you can go have lunch at that particular table. And so we would love it if our commissioners and collaborative council members and people who are on our committees would sit at a table where they have some expertise and really help guide the conversation if for some reason it falls flat or needs a little jump start. We'd appreciate it if you would be there to make it happen. Some examples of these tables include the 1622, accessing community mental health resources, juvenile law and procedure, mental health courts, things like that. And we also plan to have a table when you exit the, once you've done giving your presentation, when you exit and go into the lobby, kind of a follow-up table. So people will know, the attendees will know where to meet the people who just spoke and ask the questions, ask any remaining questions. So next, I also get to discuss our 1622 guide. So this guide was created in conjunction with our data committee. It walks through the Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 1622, which, as many of you know, is the early identification of a defendant suspected of having a mental illness or intellectual disability. It discusses the purpose of 1622, the procedures for complying with the law, and some frequently asked questions that we received from a variety of stakeholders. The guide also includes a few procedural charts, including one that shows which forms go with which step in the process. We all know I can't do anything without adding a procedural chart, so I hope you enjoy. Bexar County has already used this chart and made their own step-by-step procedure. It's an excellent example of a county who has charted out their process. They have found and fixed issues through meetings for years, I'm told, and we like to use their chart as an example of how you can make it your own for your county. We are looking forward to helping counties with their 1622 process through our technical assistance program. The data committee is reviewing the final draft of this guide, but if you have a special interest and you're not on the committee, I have the guide with me on my computer. We can make edits during the break. I'm also happy to send you a copy and you can look at it on your own time. Thank you so much to the Summit Curriculum Committee and the Data Committee for really shaping these projects. Appreciate it.
In particular, Dr. Alameda, who's head of the data committee, thank you. And I also, you know, one of the reasons we have that committee is because we have a difficult time measuring compliance with things like 1622. And the view is that out in the real world, compliance is spotty, to say the least. So, you know, kudos to the committee for, you know, presenting this guide and the carrot that we can hopefully deploy to encourage compliance with the statute, and make and kind of demonstrate how it is doable. So that you know, so here's a committee that really is looking at how to measure things and how to improve our access to information, and has gone above and beyond in terms of, well, we don't have great measurement, we maybe don't have great compliance, let's figure out a way to attack not just the measurement, but the compliance. So great work by them. All right, now we're to Liz. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to talk about my projects. If you turn to your tab number 6 in your notebook, you're going to see the technical assistance updates. And Michael, do you mind handing Judge Helms a guide, please, real fast? Thank you. Sorry about that, Judge. In the technical assistance section, before we get there, so we'll wait till this next one comes up, let me tell you a little bit about our innovations map. As everybody knows, we released that earlier this year. Since we released it, we actually had 2 contractors entering data into the map. We were able to get about 1/3 of the map complete, but while we were doing that process, we actually noticed some updates that we needed to make. So I worked with OCA, and we actually made several updates to the site that are going to be really great and really add to the long-term viability of the site. With those updates, we actually have taken the site off of our main website right now, and it's going to be down until November, right in time for the summit, and while we put the bulk of the data into the site. So come the summit, I hope all of you will be able to check out the site again and see a lot more data in the county pages. Now, if you turn to the page about the pilot counties, it gives you a snapshot, and that'll be the first page in your technical assistance section. It gives you a snapshot of how our pilot programs are going. We had selected Denton, Grayson, and Smith County. In the past year, they have completed SIM mappings, both Grayson and Denton have. Smith County is scheduled to complete their SIM mapping next week on the 22nd and 23rd. They have also completed HHSC's GEL and REACH Learning Collaborative. We also contracted with the National Center for State Courts to evaluate the program. A team from NCSC has actually gone out to all 3 counties and is continuing to gather information about how the program is being implemented there. And we hope to have an update further about all of this in the new year. If you turn to the page that says the Texas SIM mappings, you can see a document, you can actually see a map of the state of Texas. And looking at that, you can see the mappings that have been done in some form or another in Texas for the past 5 years. What we've been able to gather is that there are about 48 counties that have been mapped, so there's still a lot more to do in Texas. And you can see that there are really a big need for other counties to have an opportunity to have their systems reviewed, their resources mapped, and their gaps identified through a SIM mapping workshop. In 2022 alone, HHSC and JCMH, along with other agencies, were able to complete at least 10 SIM mappings serving about 15 counties. There are 5 more known workshops that are scheduled between now and the end of the year. If you turn now to the page right before the SIM mappings, which is the Texas Mental Health Courts, this is my favorite page, by the way. I'm going to nerd out just for a moment. You can find another map showing where the specialty courts are operating in the state of Texas. If you look at the light blue color, you will see where the mental health programs are operating in the state of Texas, the mental health court programs. There are approximately 38 mental health court programs in the state of Texas operating across 25 counties. That's it. I've been able to work with the Office of Court Administration, the Specialty Court Resource Center, as well as the Texas Association of Specialty Courts to develop and identify these programs. Our next step is to reach out to them to make sure that they have access to the JCMH resources. And that's it from me. So I'm going to pass this over back to you.
May we ask questions?
Yeah, Professor Shannon, sure.
So, sort of strange to talk into the mic, to talk to somebody right by my side. So Liz, on the first page there with the 3 pilots, what are some of the outcomes you hope to have? Will there be some listed best practices for other counties to be able to use?
So I just want, I just want to point out that I didn't know I was going to be asked questions. So,
I'm a law professor, that's what I do.
I don't know why I sat by you. Yeah. So we actually do, I think one of the biggest things that we hope out of this project is to make sure that we have an example for other counties. That is huge. We want a blueprint. We don't want people reinventing the wheel, right? So we want to be able to come up with a blueprint of how to implement this type of role into your own county. All 3 counties are actually implementing the roles differently, which I think is going to be useful across the state. So I would say that's our biggest role. There's probably a lot more, and then I'd keep you here all day talking about the pilot counties and all the wonderful things that they are doing. I will tell you that the coordinators that were selected have very unique skills. Each one of them have different strengths, and it's been very interesting to work with them and provide them support. So.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate your report. So, as many of you know, for the past few months, we've been working on legislative proposals that we're going to send to the Texas Judicial Council ahead of the 88th legislative session. So our Legislative Research Committee has divided its work into 2 subcommittees: criminal laws relating to adults with mental illness or intellectual disabilities, and the civil commitment law subcommittee. Today, you're also going to hear about the work of the Chapter 55 Advisory Committee, which sought to improve the civil laws involving children and youth with mental illness or intellectual disability. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Professor Shannon, who is going to talk about the criminal subcommittee. And before we do that, so the architect of our overall legislative approach is our Vice Chair, Justice Bill Boyce. He couldn't be with us today, but he has been the person that, has the rudder in the water and keeps us in the fairway of where we need to go. And I think you're going to be delighted to hear about the work that's been done already. And, if you all those of you who were here for the last session 2 years ago, know that we are ahead of schedule compared to where we've been before, which allows us the time to collaborate and put forth our very best product. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Professor Shannon. We'll talk a little bit more about the overall product and what we're doing with it and what will come of it, but now we're going to talk about some of the proposals.
Yeah, right. Just because tech is in my employer's name, there appear to be no special skills in that regard. Thank you, Justice Bland, and I'm sorry that Justice Boyd couldn't be here with us today. You'll note it takes 2 of us to try and pinch hit for him in his absence. So I am Brian Shannon, law professor at Texas Tech. It was my privilege to chair the so-called criminal law subcommittee of our Legislative Research Committee. Our group had come together and developed a number of proposals and whittled it down to 7 proposals that have been submitted to the Judicial Council for review leading into the next session. So I'll report on those, and then Judge Carr will report on 4 additional bills that have come out of the civil subcommittee that he chaired. And so I'll walk through these. You heard me describe some of them at our May meeting, and those of you who are members of the Legislative Research Committee, we considered them in detail at our mid-July Zoom meeting. So first, relating to the competency restoration crisis, our committee has proposed legislation that would amend Article 46B to limit or create alternatives to the use of competency restoration services or competency proceedings for certain misdemeanor cases. The recommendation hones in on and proposes that when a defendant is found incompetent to stand trial and is charged with either a Class B misdemeanor or certain Class A misdemeanors that do not involve bodily injury, and as to those Class A's, has not been convicted of a bodily injury offense in the previous 2 years, then the default for those individuals will be outpatient competency restoration only. If outpatient competency restoration is unavailable, which we know it still is in many parts of the state, or even if it is available, if a person cannot get into the OCR program within 14 days, then the case will be set for a dismissal hearing and converted, transferred under 46B 151 to a civil commitment proceeding. So we've got this continuing problem and growing problem of the backlog for forensic beds. And Dr. Simpson could speak far more on that than I, but we're over 2,500 people, right, at this point. Many of those, there are efforts at the level where we need more intensive services. You know, the legislature has generously appropriated significant dollars for more beds. There's employee staff. Christ, and the staff's looking at me because I'm going off script. But in those areas, that looks at the top end. But we tend to have more than 200 day in and day out who are charged with nonviolent misdemeanors. And there needs to be a better way to do that. Several other states, New York, for example, Michigan, for example, if somebody charged only with misdemeanors are found in competent stand trial, they're kicked to civil. And so this is our first effort at trying to move more of those cases towards a civil commitment type proceeding.
I had a client that we were trying to get the outpatient route that you have so adequately described. But what happened in my case is the county court dismissed the charge because we hit the 180 day. It was a Class B misdemeanor, and we didn't get the civil commitment paperwork filed, and so the judge had no choice but to dismiss the charge. Is there language in this statute that can help judges that are dealing with Class B misdemeanors to make certain that something like this doesn't happen in the future?
Absolutely. The hope with this is we wouldn't get to that 180-day count because up front there would be a requirement to go to either outpatient competency restoration or to move towards a dismissal and civil commitment proceedings without waiting until somebody times out, which unfortunately is, as you just spoke to, is an all too common occurrence. And it's happening with some of the Class A's as well, even with that year time period. The next bill includes largely, well, I'll add that part of that bill as well are some clarifying provisions of some issues in 46B that have been recurring pesky issues, and one of those, and I want to thank Chris from Lopez from HHSC, whose idea this was, there's a phrase, as those of you who've worked with 46B know, called, is the person likely going to be restored in the foreseeable future? Well, that's not defined elsewhere. It's perplexing to lawyers, judges, as well as a lot of the forensic docs that are involved in these cases and asked to testify. And so this bill includes a replacement for foreseeable future to a more functional type of definition. That is what the statute calls for. Asking the forensic doc, the expert, say, do you believe that this person is capable of being restored in the time period allowed for competency restoration under the statute and the one possible 60-day exception, or not? And so at least there's a time frame that's already set forth in the statute. And so our hope is that would be a positive change to help with understanding of the statute. Another bill that we've proposed is to amend Article 46B.084 and related provisions to address a recurring issue where individuals have their competency restored, but then prior to the case being adjudicated, their mental condition deteriorates or degrades, and they're no longer competent. And 46B.084 unfortunately does not have much in there at present on this, and lawyers and courts have had to kind of make it up as they go, and when I've been consulted on that, we've got recommendations, but we see a need there and have recommended a way to codify that to be consistent with constitutional requirements. The third bill that we proposed is one that this commission proposed 2 years ago. Judicial Council agreed, it went forward, it died in the last days of the session, and we want to try again. It's relating to providing good time credits for defendants who are in an outpatient competency restoration treatment program for that time. There are already provisions to do so for inpatient competency restoration and jail-based competency restoration, and the late, great Dr. Floyd Jennings had asked the question a couple of years ago, why are we treating this differently? And so that's that proposal, and we'll go forward with that. The fourth criminal bill then is one that came from our magistration subgroup that looks at 1622s and has attempted to restore something that was part of the Sandra Bland Act that then in that same session sort of got passed, and then it was unpassed, if you will, if that's an appropriate word. Two different bills got passed in that session, and under statutory construction notions, the later enacted bill prevailed. But basically under 1622, it's Class Bs and up. Yet we're finding many non-violent kind of entry cases, some of which involve the potential for municipal jail time, which are Class Cs. And so this would expand 1622 to include the possibility of those simple sorts of evaluations that take place under 1622 to extend to Cs, although with a discretionary basis, where the magistrate would have some discretion in that regard. The fifth of our proposals is one to try and come back to the bail reform provisions that were enacted during the second special session following the general session last year, where there are some conflicts with what was changed in 1703 of the Code of Criminal Procedure and 17032 that would, as we know, allow for many nonviolent offenses to have a bond without bail, so to have a release but with a mental health treatment condition. That tool was limited by some of what was passed in that bill. There appears to be some opportunity for some tweaking of that legislation, and so what we're proposing is a carve-out for 17032, and in fact fully restore 17032. Our one additional bill is what happens in a misdemeanor case where it's Class C case in front of a court where the JP's got to consider the matter and the person isn't or doesn't appear to be competent. 46B only applies to, in effect, Class Bs and up, yet constitutionally there's an issue even in a Class C for somebody to be adjudicated if it appears that they're a person who's not competent. So this is a bill that was also proposed 2 years ago. It made it to the last days of the session, died as part of some of the trade-offs in the latter days of the session. And so we're going to try, or recommending trying that again, where there would be a potential dismissal process or proceeding in the event that it appears somebody doesn't have the capacity at that point in the municipal proceedings. Last one then is one where we looked at it and it actually came out of Judge Carr's SB 362 subcommittee 2 years ago. The proposal left our Judicial Commission, was embraced by the Judicial Commission, didn't get a sponsor, and so it didn't move any further, right, into the legislative process. And part of that is we kind of said, hey, here's 3 ideas, here's 3 alternatives. you pick one. Well, maybe that wasn't the best legislative strategy. We came back as a group and have recommended going forward with one. When this was before the legislative committee in mid-July, there were still some concerns about it. We pulled it back with input certainly from our liaisons from the Court of Criminal Appeals, Beth's help, Christie's help, Denise Onkum was a big help. We've worked through some of those issues, and in effect, it's trying to avoid a reverse diversion, if you will. Somebody has been picked up on the civil side for an emergency detention because of suspected mental illness. They're deemed to be dangerous to self or others. They're taken to an emergency facility, whether that's a mental health drop-off center, an emergency room, wherever the appropriate facility is in a county, and then while there, engage in conduct that could be chargeable as a crime. What this bill would do would be for nonviolent offenses and certain, I guess, low-level property crime. If there's minimal criminal mischief versus big-time criminal mischief, for those, it would generally require the officer to defer an arrest to allow the person to get treatment in that emergency setting. Now, we've added some wiggle room to give the office, since our July meeting, we've added some wiggle room to have some discretion for the officer if the officer nonetheless believes that, hey, in this case, no, we got to do the arrest now. But we think it's a real positive because we're seeing too often now in the state, in some counties, persons who are in effect where we'd hope they'd be in the civil side, getting emergency detention, trying to get connected to treatment, and then almost a reverse diversion back to jail. Now, the officer, the state could still make a choice to arrest and prosecute that person after the treatment, but this would just put the brakes on it for a bit. So those are the 7 proposals that have gone forward from the criminal side, and I will hand off to Judge Carr.
I just note that every time I show up at a meeting, you know, Professor Shannon's given full reign. I keep handed paper with my everything highlighted and a staff member whispering in my ear, say this. What's the deal with that? I don't know. But anyway, we have 4 proposals, but an observation going in due to the depth of the work that our great staff here does. They've already prepared proposed bill language. They've harmonized it with other statutes that might be affected, and it's like we're kind of all taught in law school for trials. If you show up prepared and if you got a certain matter you want included in the court's charge, if you show up with it all ready to go, then you've just increased your chances of getting it immeasurably. So I want to tip my hat to the staff and thank them for all the thorough work they've done, because a very high number of our proposals that we submitted in the last session were indeed enacted into law. We have 4 proposals that we'll be submitting at this time. There were certainly many others discussed, and it is a process, and we'll be probably bringing some of the other ones back again. But the first one is an electronic application for emergency detention warrants by qualified professionals other than medical doctors. This primarily raises itself in rural areas where there may not be a MD or a DO available that is the treating physician of a particular person, and it allows qualified people in the local mental health authority to submit the electronic application. And this could be over 100 miles in order to facilitate getting someone at a critical level the care that they need. Secondly, we were concerned about the law currently provides that if peace officers take someone into custody, on their own motion for emergency detention, then they can seize firearms that may be in their possession, but there was not a similar provision or to make the law compatible with situations where an officer was taking someone into custody for transportation to a mental health facility under an emergency detention warrant. So this would basically expand the application of that process to the warrant situation. And then, of course, for return of weapons, if the person turns out to be available to have the weapon returned to, or a family member or whatever, then the other statutory scheme work that is already in place for seized weapons generally would kick in, and it can follow that process. This one, the next one, the third one.
We're saying secure firearms instead of seize, just,
I'm sorry?
let's use the word secure the firearms.
What she said. The next one just seemed to patently make common sense, is that when you're receiving treatment for a mental health condition that requires the administration of psychotropic medication, well, a lot of times there were questions about whether or not doctors could, particularly in situations where the patient is not capable of making rational decisions, draw blood to make sure that the correct dosage was currently in the person's system, so compatible with other rights and resources that doctors have. This would now make the process in appropriate situations for a mandatory blood draw as authorized by statute. And finally, the fourth bit of legislation that we have to offer is a clarification on law enforcement officers' duties upon presenting someone to a facility for mental health services, is that this will clarify that they are not bound to remain at the scene. Once they have delivered the person safely, their job has been done. I mean, we all know many law enforcement officers. I'm certain that in most cases, if there was something that required restraint assistance or something, I'm sure that they would step in, but there's always been a gray area as to whether or not they are mandated to step in or not. This clarifies that area and says that they do not have such a requirement. So that is the report of the Civil Legislative Subcommittee, and I will yield back to Molly.
Thank you, Judge. I was honored to be part of the Chapter 55 Advisory Committee. When it was originally written, Chapter 55 of the Texas Family Code borrowed language from the Code of Criminal Procedure and the Health and Safety Code, and those were written for adults. We know that kids are different. There was a need for a comprehensive revision to make Chapter 55 more appropriate and more specific developmentally for children and youth. The committee had aimed to streamline processes and fitness to proceed and lack of responsibility proceedings, to strengthen the value of expert examinations and reports that are used in those proceedings, and to expand the use of outpatient restoration and services when it's appropriate and when it's available. The committee submits this revision as a single legislative package rather than as individual amendments. And y'all, once you take a look at our legislative report, you're going to see it's over 100 pages long. We would have loved to give you each a copy of that today, but we also like trees. We have a few copies of it back here. Please pick it up at the break, take a look at it, and you'll see the Chapter 55 revision in there as well. So the committee recommended making several small changes to Chapter 55 that encourage the use of outpatient services whenever available. The first major legislative change is to Section 5519. Section 5519 currently requires the juvenile court to transfer to adult criminal court the case of a child that has been stayed while the child is receiving inpatient mental health services under a Subchapter B commitment. The committee proposes making that transfer discretionary rather than the current mandatory, and requiring a hearing that has the same standard as a certification hearing. You'll see this recommendation echoed in a similar proposal under section 5544 in subchapter C, fitness to proceed. The next change involves the ambiguity in sections 5533 and 5552, in which a child may be found unfit to proceed or to lack responsibility, but does not meet the criteria for court-ordered services. What happens then? We've been asking these questions for years in court. Well, in that situation, the judge does not have the ability to order any services for the child. The committee proposes allowing the judge to order appropriate and available treatment or services for a child in this situation in consultation with the local juvenile probation department. This provision also allows the probation department to provide restoration services for certain children on their own. The committee heard a lot of feedback about low quality fitness to proceed and lack of responsibility reports, and I'm seeing some heads nodding, so you may have seen those run across your desk. In response, the committee added some requirements into sections 5531, 5535, 5551, and 5554 that make these reports more useful, including consideration of a child's developmental and functional capability to stand trial, as well as offering an opinion as to whether the child can be restored, whether the child meets the criteria for court-ordered services, which criteria the child meets, and whether the child can be treated in an alternative setting. So these are common sense, no cost added proposals that are going to make those reports more useful to judges and to lawyers in court. And finally, the committee suggests that all procedures for temporary or extended court-ordered mental health and IDD services be moved into a brand new subchapter E. This change is going to make it easier to understand the proceedings. It also requires the local mental health authority to file a recommendation for the child's proposed treatment and to identify a provider 3 days prior to the hearing. These are much needed changes that will prevent delays and hopefully prevent deterioration. If you're interested in this legislation, if you have questions, let's talk over lunch. And I'd be remiss if I did not thank the committee and the committee chairs, Lynn Hadnot in Collin County, Amanda Britton in Midland County, and Dr. Susan Palacios from TJJD. The revision would not exist without their leadership, their knowledge, and their vision. Do we want to go back to the budget?
But just before we do that, so one of the reasons we only have a few copies of this is because it's the September version of a draft. And what happens after our proposals are put in writing and they've been vetted by not only the subcommittees, but also the executive committee has offered comments and revisions. And then the next step is to present our proposals to the Judicial Council. They're going to be sent to the appropriate subcommittee of the Judicial Council. The Judicial Council's meeting at the end of September, where we expect and hope that they will adopt our proposals as part of the 2023 legislative agenda. So that's kind of the process. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to work on improving not so much the substance of the proposals, but our delivery of them, our legislative drafting and that kind of thing. So if you look at a draft or you're interested in a draft and you want to offer comments, you can, and because we're just in September and we hope to finalize through the Judicial Council at the end of September, and at that point we're going to be near final is what we're going to roll out to the legislature. So that's kind of the process, and our hope is that it'll go smoothly this year. It went smoothly last session, and as I said, there's been a ton of additional work done on the front end. Thank you very much to all of you who participated on the Legislative Research Committee. The report also includes a section on services that other stakeholders in JCMH are going to be proposing and working on toward passage in the legislative session that aren't directly related to the mission of the Judicial Commission, but they are ancillary, and so to the extent that some of those proposals directly affect the intersection of the judiciary and mental health, we have a a sort of policy paper at the end that talks about the importance of these proposals and how they directly affect the state judiciary in a way that makes them of interest to us. So not having these be JCMH proposals per se, but proposals in which JCMH expresses an interest. If you have comments on that, we'd like to hear that too. And because we've been super efficient in our business meeting, we're going to turn toward, we're not going to go to lunch early. We're going to go ahead and use this time to have our commissioner reports and collaborative council reports. And that way, after Representative Moody speaks about the legislative process after lunch and commissioner questions are addressed, maybe we'll be on the road a little bit early for those of you that are here from out of town. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and just open the floor to our commissioners. If you have announcements, anything you want the commission to know, now's the time. And hopefully we can get around to everybody with a microphone. And maybe we'll start over on this side and kind of move around, and that way we'll have some idea of who's up. Anybody, if you guys have...
Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I'm Pam Liston, and I'm a fairly new commissioner. I've been here for about a year, but we were meeting virtually, so very happy to be with you here in person and get to see you all face to face.
Want to do something together?
Like a song and dance?
Well, maybe that. No, I was thinking about the new 988 line since we've met last time, going live on July the 16th. So the national line 988 went live on July the 16th. We've been meeting with HHSC and Sonia Gaines' leadership, in which there are 4 local mental health authorities answering those calls. And so if an individual dials that line seeking mental health services, and we are not only answering on phone but also text, and have been logging the type of calls, implementing new technology that allows for there to be multiple appointments done at the time of the call, protocols on handling the nature of the call. And so this is not just simply a patient scheduling. It actually has to do with handling and part of the suicide prevention hotline. So nationally, SAMHSA, has Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, has contracted with a group that then with each state has, state by state, setting up these arrangements. I think because we have a local mental health authority structure in Texas, it was a little easier to actually have in-place contracts and do that implementation. So I could talk about here in Austin, and we're answering the phone on that 988 line for 76 counties. Our initial experience, I think that from one Saturday to the following Saturday after the line went live, we had, I think, almost an 80% increase in calls. That's settled back to about a 37% increase in hotline calls. And so, Sonia, I know that you agree. 988.
Absolutely. 988, we're very excited about it. Now people can remember just, a 3-digit number, just like 911. Now we have a 3-digit number for people to access mental health care and support. So we're very, very excited about it. And to David's point, it's covering all 264 counties across the state. We are gearing up. Right now, anyone that calls, they're always going to get a hold of a live person. That's real different than some other call lines, right? They're going to actually get a hold of someone, that understands the services that are available in their area. We are gearing up so that we can answer all the calls in Texas. Today, we answer about 60% of the in-state calls, and it doesn't mean that people don't get a person. They will get a person. Sometimes they may get a person in another state, but they get pointed in the right direction. Our goal is to get up to 90% come this time next year, or a little bit sooner, by July. So very, very excited about having that number available. The other thing I wanted to mention is, many of you know, we have the statewide Behavioral Health Coordinating Council that includes 25 state agencies, I believe. Dr. Harvey, who's not with us today, she's on vacation, but they are about to publish an update to that 5-year strategic plan that they put together. One of the things I'm excited about, that it now includes a forensic piece that Dr. Jenny Simpson and her team have been responsible for working with many of you and other stakeholders in terms of putting that together. There's also a substance use component that we were required to do as well from a legislative standpoint. So look for that. That's coming out hopefully in the coming weeks. It's actually done. We're just trying to get all the accessibility and links and all of that correct. The other thing I want to mention is, many of you know, after the Uvalde incident, there was a budget execution item that came out that required that we at HHSC develop some new services called multisystemic treatment. Many of you have heard about that. It is a proprietary model, but can be very effective with at-risk youth. So we're very, very excited that we're rolling that out and identifying the sites that will be involved in that. And then there's another service for youth that we've had quite a bit of experience with across, I think, more than 20 of our local mental health authorities. That's coordinated specialty care. And that, again, is also a very effective mode of treatment for, sorry, Siri, sorry.
It's complicated.
It is. So, I know. So, and that was in 988. So anyway, there's a number of exciting things that are happening, you know, more to come, but, you know, there's a number of things that will be coming your way.
Thank you, Sonia. It's great to sit by Commissioner Gaines in order to be able to, she can tee it up, and I can tell you that StarCare was just recently named one of 7 MST sites. So we are fast and furiously coming on board to launch, as Commissioner said, it's a very intensive in-reach, helping people, families and kiddos before they're actually incarcerated, and hoping to get connections to children's services such that they won't have to roll into adult services. One of my kind of flags is that I like to raise from time to time is the easiest way to address the excess demand in adult care is to get kids the services that they need. And Thank you. So we're really excited about that, and I'm also excited to tell you that we are also the coordinated specialty care site in West Texas. That is, another word for that is first episode psychosis. This is a on young adults and children and families, such that helping people engage to mental health treatment, engage to services that then they can be very productive. A lot of focus on vocational training and working with mental illness and working along with managing your symptoms such that you are a active and contributing member of society. Again, not enrolling into the adult services indigent care program for the state. So we're really excited about those two things. I would be remiss if I didn't tag along to the 988 discussion by saying, as a local mental health authority, I am a local mental health authority, not one of the 4 sites that are answering those 988 calls. The 988 calls are a nationwide approach to connecting people to care. You might say, well, how does that work with your local mental health authority and the MCOT, the Mobile Crisis Outreach Team, or the suicide hotline that we have? 988 is very much about getting people connected to services and immediate conversation with a counselor on the other end of the line for whom they are not engaged in services. As you know, 20% of all people will have some kind of diagnosable mental health condition in their lifetime, but only 3% of that 20% will have a serious mental illness. The hotlines and the MCOT services that the local mental health authorities run are very dedicated to law enforcement, communities, families, and services for the people who are currently in our care. We had a real push for education of our community to ensure that our law enforcement partners and judicial partners and hospital partners knew they don't have to call 988 and be routed through Austin to get to the hotline in Lubbock. That's not what this is about. This is actually a force multiplier of what the local mental health authorities hotlines do, because we are really very much focused on those people that are currently in our care or in a psychiatric crisis in need of inpatient hospitalization. The last thing I'll say about Lubbock, and this is like, you guys are my people when we start talking about diversion and criminal justice diversion, in that you understand how big of a deal it is when I tell you we were the recipient of some ARPA funding by the City of Lubbock and the County of Lubbock to construct a building where we will have the Hope Center for Diversion Services for health and well-being, and we are taking our diversion out of a outpatient clinic setting and having an actual beacon of hope in our service array where people can go and actually get the care they need in a place that is dedicated to nothing but diversion. So we're really excited about that.
Good morning. No one wants to follow that. I'm Stacy Matthews. I am the judge of the 277th District Court in Williamson County. It's so nice to see everybody. I am looking forward to the summit. I've been trying to get people to come, and now we're full, so I'm really thrilled to hear that. But it's okay. People are going online, but I'm really looking forward to it. One of the things we're doing in Williamson County, which I'm excited, is that where Bluebonnet Trails has partnered, which is our mental health authority, has partnered with our county and with one of our, one of our local private mental health hospitals to use some ARPA funding. He's putting in some additional funding, and then we have a private, so it's a true private public partnership, which is really neat to watch how this is unfolding. And we're going to do an expansion of beds for our kids, because the juvenile need is so great. An expansion of beds through the actual mental health hospital, which is right down the street from our juvenile center. But we also are going to put in a diversion center. We have our JJP there, which we don't call it the JJP. We have a different name for it. But we have our JJP and our detention center and our residential treatment center. But we have a lot of kiddos that come to school and they have a crisis. And where do they end up? Detention, because they are. So instead, we're going to put in a diversion center that's going to be very short-term crisis run, and hopefully to avoid getting them further again into the system. So we're really excited about some of that funding and starting to build and those collaborations. So
We're actually coming to see your site next week.
oh, good. Well, good. Well, I need to see. Let me know when you're going to be there. Love to see you.
Well, these are all hard to follow, right? So, good luck as we're sitting around the table. My name is Adrienne Kennedy. I'm the past president of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm also continuing as an advisor to the board of NAMI National, and some of the steps that they're taking, especially around criminal justice issues, because as you know, that's a big passion in my heart. My son had a couple of adjudication situations, and I know what interventions could have helped, that did help, and what others could have helped more. And so we know that it's really boots on the ground, high levels of training, high levels of the kind of precision that you're putting. I mean, when I heard about your legislative work now, I mean, congratulations to all of you who worked on that. I have my heart is off and open to all of you, and very thrilled about that. Truly, because we will save lives, we will save families, we will save a community population. I mean, it's a huge community that needs the kind of help that we're delivering, and I'm very grateful to all of you. First of all, let me say that I want to really give a big shout out also to what I heard in terms of the Juvenile Commission, because I have 12 grandchildren, and because our genes, G-E-N-E-S, are loaded, I also know that among my 12 grandchildren, at least 3 have had diagnosable illness issues that need early care, okay? So I'm the lived experience at the table that spans 4 generations, quite honestly. So that's where my passion is. I want to give a huge shout out to what I consider the dream team that took my invitation to submit to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. Dr. Jenny Simpson, Christy Taylor, and Judge Red Carr was there, but they made an incredible presentation on Eliminate the Wait, and it was standing room only and very, very well received. I think it's very important for us, even as a state body, to connect on the national profile of things, because that's a great feedback loop, input and output in terms of what we can learn and grow from. Also, among other commissioners appearing at the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. By the way, it had over 8,000 participants in Nashville. That's not a small crowd to be in front of and to be part of that scene. But the other people that I invited, and Vanessa Price, who's also director of NADCP, we had Annie Keller, Dr. Annie Keller spoke there, as well as John Petrella. So I considered that my dream team, and when I said, can I recruit you guys? And I was so grateful they said yes. I want to put an extra emphasis on the things that you've heard from other commissioners here, and that is NAMI is incredibly focused in the criminal justice area, because we made sure, when I was president 4 years ago, we made sure that in our strategic plan, we named criminal justice as one of the 3 top areas. And that's building even stronger now that, in fact, the current president at the national level of NAMI is Judge Joyce Campbell. Judge Joyce Campbell is a judge who started the first treatment court in Ohio more than 20 years ago. And so, and by the way, I just saw an article. She also was the lead on the Ohio Judicial Commission education platform. She just had their conference, and I just got a picture of her and an article that I will forward on so that it can be forwarded on to you if you're interested. So you have that kind of national loop around. You see all the interconnectedness that you mentioned, Beth. That's really super important. I also want to say that we understand, and by the way, the other thing I want to say, to the point that David Evans made, and that is that NAMI featured the the Integral Care Program called the Fourth Alternative on one of its national webinars. So this kind of notice, it all impels us to push these big rocks up a very steep hill. I also want to say that, NAMI has been a big voice in the 988. I still remember getting the first call to say, when I was president, to say, can you get the board's agreement to sign on to this within the next 24 hours? And we're talking about I'm sorry. I have better than that senile memory situation. No, in 2018 when it first was thought of. Okay. I also want to say that the notion of coordinated specialty care, coordinated care is incredibly important, because it's the one way that will reduce the sense of shame about mental illness issues, and that everything we can do to push and promulgate the notion of coordinated care is incredibly important, including getting insurers on board with the same kind of intensity and commitment to that. It's incredibly useful to us and very significant. And I also want to say that because of the presence that Texas made with Christy, Dr. Simpson, and Andy Keller and John Petrella, the director, Vanessa Price, who also, I got her to run for the national board. She sits on NAMI's national board. She's bringing a free training to town on October 20th for, in fact, it says, it's for sworn police officers, deputy sheriffs, highway patrol officers, etc., other key staff, including leadership, adjacent roles, and community partner policymakers. So I can send this through the line so you can see what's available. There are 50 slots, and it will be here, and in fact, in the Dove Springs site of Integral Care. Thank you so much, David, for providing that site for us. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. And I'll tell you this, my grandchildren thank you, because at the end of the day, 7 of them are located here in Texas. So what you do is going to matter. Thank you.
Elise Ferguson with Collin County, and I just really have 2 announcements. One is that the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers are continuing to provide mental health training 4 times a year. We have one coming up October 27th. And then also Collin County sponsors an annual symposium on mental health in our county. We have over 500 people participating. and that will be coming up November the 17th. Those are all online and taking registration, so we'd love to see you there. They've grown into such big events with community support and really been an opportunity to bring our community together and network and have discussions about these things that are difficult for us to maneuver and negotiate without coming together and discussing it as a group.
Good morning, thank you. I'm Charles Stevens, Comal County Court of Law. Did it go on? Test, yeah. I'd like to report that things are kind of slow and easy in Comal County, but we're trapped between San Antonio and Austin, and it's not. It's, you know, one of the fastest growing counties in the country, percentage-wise, so just a few highlights of the things that we're working on over the last couple years. Fortunately, I think the Commissioner's Court in particular has come around to the need for the kind of mental health issues that we're talking about and recognize that. So that helped us establish the mental health court, which is up and running now. We're going to be using our ARPA funding, some of it anyway, to build a crisis stabilization unit in Comal County. We have our SIM mapping with HHCS, in October, later on in October. We're working with STRAC, the Southwest Texas Regional Advisory Council, and STIC, the Southwest Texas Crisis Collaborative, and those are based out of San Antonio, and I think they're 22 county region, and we've opened the door to work with them on the trauma and mental health care that they've been working on. It's come around sort of a backdoor type situation, but that door has opened up, and we're looking forward to working with them. And last but not least, we have, it's been a little over a year and a half or so that we hired a full-time magistrate, and that magistrate's come on and has really helped us beef up our 1622 procedures. So we're coming into the reality that we're busy, and it's keeping those things are all keeping us very busy. So that's it.
Dan Rich, Police Chief, City of San Marcos. Our SIM mapping is actually tomorrow. We have about, I think, 62 registered, so we're looking forward to a good day and a half there. I was in Lubbock on Monday. Lubbock is looking beautiful and green, I have to say. We were there for the first active attack leadership course post-Uvalde. And so we will be touching every police chief in the state of Texas over the next 2 years, wherein we are requiring, we hope to accomplish it through statute, but right now everybody's on board. We're going to require active attack leadership to help mitigate another Uvalde across your communities. We also about grave concerns associated with the staffing and retention in DA's offices and the significant backlog that we see with the adjudication of cases. And then there was discussion about creating a Center for Law Enforcement Excellence for the state of Texas. It'd be the first of its kind. It's far needed, and so there's going to be some more push into that. So thank you.
Chief, good morning, everybody. Denise Onken, I'm a Bureau Chief, Harris County District Attorney's Office out of Houston, Texas. And just a few updates. The first thing I want to say is our Mental Health Diversion Center that all of you have heard me talk about before, but we just hit our 4-year anniversary. The beginning of September was 4 years that we've had it. We have diverted over 6,000 individuals without charges in Harris County, and that's for low-level, nonviolent misdemeanor offenses. And I must say that in the 4 years, we've seen a lot of change, certainly a lot of law enforcement buy-in on that, and we see officers now, not even, typically in our jurisdiction, you have to call the DA if you want charges and to arrest someone for Class B or above, but what we're seeing now is law enforcement is diverting on their own those individuals without even calling our a big win. So anyway, we're really proud of that. We've even been recognized by the National Association of Counties. Not that we're in it for any awards or anything like that, but it's certainly nice to be recognized in that regard. And I want to thank all of our partners, certainly in Harris County. It goes without saying, all of law enforcement, our two lead law enforcement agencies, HPD, Houston Police Department, and the Harris County Sheriff's Department, as well as all the many 80-plus agencies that we have in our jurisdiction who've devoted. And I also want to thank our local mental health authority because they run the diversion center. Judge Helms next to me is on the board there, and certainly appreciative of all those efforts and the great job that Wayne Young, who's not here with us today, but the CEO over there, does in running that diversion center and making sure everything runs smoothly. So super proud of that. I also want to just mention our jail-based competency restoration. We kicked that off within the last 18 months or so. Really good success rate, 90+% of restoration on that. The only thing we need, and I see that Sonny Gaines stepped out, is money from the state so that we can get more than 20 individuals in at a time. So we are really in need of that because we could prevent more individuals from sitting in jail and waiting to go to state hospital. And then I certainly want to mention that we are working with the Texas District and County Attorneys Association to have some online training and videos available across the state to prosecutors. Several of the prosecutors from our office as well as other jurisdictions in Texas have participated in that, so we're really looking forward to that rolling out. And then the last thing that I want to mention, just to pony off of what Chief Stanbridge said, is that the District Attorney Kim Ogg in Harris County has recently convened a meeting with all of law enforcement in Harris County pursuant to the events in Uvalde to get all of law enforcement together, presenting them with the MOU so that there would be some direction if such tragedy did happen in our jurisdiction. So we appreciate law enforcement working with us. And I do want to commend everybody from every jurisdiction of all the things you're doing, because in the time I've sat on the commission, I've seen a lot of movement, a lot of change, a lot of positive. In fact, I even visited Williamson County lately and saw the new little diversion center. I said little, but it's a different jurisdiction, but I appreciated seeing it. And I was so impressed by Blue Bonnet Trails there, talking about the things that they stole from Harris County. And I said, no, you got ideas from us, but you made it even better and more applicable to your jurisdiction. So I think that I am so proud of this state and everybody doing such great work. So thank you very much.
I'm Bonnie Helms. I'm a retired family court judge from Houston, but I am by definition a retirement failure. I am the program chair for the Harris Center, and we have taken over the 988 for that whole part of the state. Okay, just all right. Polar here. Anyway, so it was very interesting because one of my big frustrations is that I'm still sitting as a visiting judge in 8 different counties. And when I hear CPS cases, invariably, I need to order trauma-informed care for these kids. And it's like, well, Judge, we don't have anybody. The state's not reimbursing us, and we don't have anybody that can do. So I was visiting my and she's a marriage and family therapist, and she has this neurofeedback thing where you put the stuff around the bed, and both my granddaughters are ADHD. When she found out they were diagnosed, she said never will they have a psychotropic drug. So she learned about this, putting neurofeedback around on the brain and having it hooked up to the computer and watching the computer. They come in and say, Mom, I'm losing focus. She does it for them, and neither one of them have ever made anything but an A, and one of them is a junior in college now, still doing the same thing. So anyway, I said to her in watching it, I said, could this be used for trauma? And she said, Mom, that's the reason it was invented, for PTSD for soldiers. So I called Wayne, And I said, can we get some people sent out here to California to be trained with this stuff and to get the machines and come back and get them from the Harris Center to treat these kids that need trauma care badly. And he said, Judge, the state's not going to. I said, please just try. 2 hours he called me back and said they're going to pay. So we now have trauma care in Harris County that I'm able to order for, and I've also suggested, and I think we're going to do it soon, is take some of our people, send them to California, have them be so they can come back and train, and we can spread this because it's a very non-painful, quick-moving help for these kids. I'll give you the thing in a minute. It's EDY something or other. I've got it on the on my phone. I'll look it up. Anyway, it. Besides that, I'm on the, because of the board program chair for the Harris Center. I'm on the Texas Council of Community Centers, and they are doing some really, truly outstanding work too, legislatively as well. And they're really good folks for us to be working with, as far as doubling our energy to go around and talk about what we need by way of mental health. And in addition to that, I attended the CASA conference, and it was fabulous. They based on lived experiences, and that mentioned a couple of times, and they had some absolutely fabulous speakers that had been, part of CPS, had been lived in various parts of criminal system and how they had come back out. And one of the programs they did was on Cafe Momentum. It is a group out of Dallas that started working with kids that were in the juvenile justice system, started working with chefs, how to cook and how to present food and do stuff like this. They realized, and these kids were deficient in their education, so they built a school attached to the cafe itself. So the kids are getting their education, graduating from high school, and then getting some scholarship help to go ahead and go to college. But the kids talked a lot about this was the first time, which was trauma, first time that they really trusted anybody. And a wonderful presentation that they did. They are spreading Cafe Momentum to various parts of the country. They're opening one in Nashville. If you guys are interested, you might want to contact them in Dallas and see if they wanted to come to your area and open something similar, because I just thought this was absolutely spectacular. Anyway, and the last thing, then I'll pass it on, and you can play with figuring out. But anyway, is that we, my husband and I are working with some other folks, and we have formed the 501c3 called NTZ, No Trafficking Zone. They have named the NRG Park in Houston as the first no trafficking zone in the world, the first sports facility to recognize trafficking. That's the reason that we ended up getting FIFA to come to Houston, because they came and saw what we were doing about sex trafficking and were so impressed. So we are making a big difference. The training they're doing at NRG Park, from the people who make sandwiches to the people that take tickets to the HATRA, the Human Trafficking Resource Alliance. So we've got a whole group of people that are all working together and training folks. Now we've been asked by people in Dallas, people in New York, different places, to come and do the training there to help stop the trafficking, sex trafficking of these children, and to serve as a help in the jails, to sit with them, to have advocates that are able to be with them, and to help with some of the psychological treatment and care that they need afterwards. So anyway, you can see I truly am a retirement failure.
Absolutely. Good job. Good job, Judge. I want to add the back. Oh, sure.
You can keep. Okay. The reason for Judge Helen's stadium centralized location for a no trafficking zone is that it is well known within our anti-trafficking circles that
the Super Bowl is the greatest amount of, highest number of trafficking, sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, sexual exploitation happens in and around the Super Bowl every year. Highest number of sales. My stuff is going to be about, I'm very blessed with my mental health court families and kiddos, and it's just been honestly a blessing to me. I'm learning from them. You know, I always say that you can tell a child at any age, literally any age. My 27-year-old will say, yes, exactly, Mom. It is so hard to be your age. But I really mean that sincerely about the age between 6th grade and graduating high school. I literally wouldn't take $1 million. I'm old and wrinkled. It's coming on and off. I apologize. I'll try to speak loud. So I want to thank this commission because juvenile delinquency has always been the afterthought of literally every system on earth, except for this honorable commission. I want to take my hat off. Justice Bland, Justice Huddle, Justice McClure, Judge Hervey, and all of your predecessors before you, and Christy Taylor and her rock star team, Judge Specia, thank you so much for legitimizing the work we do in juvenile delinquency, because I just love these wacky kids. And I'm so grateful to y'all for literally putting your stamp of approval on our work, and it really goes a long way. I have a little bit of a blurb because I want to support Ms. Kennedy and her work with both her lived experience and the work of this committee, and Professor Dr. Shannon, his work and what he and Judge Carr are doing to change the legislation, because one of my best friend's son had the unfortunate route to help for his schizophrenia through the TDCJ system. It was at that time, for the first time ever, they realized he had schizophrenia, and it was trauma beyond anyone. It was just almost an inhumane situation. It really was inhumane. He then was able to live independently and took his medicine, and his mom was very, very supportive, and he listened to his mom, which is like an essential, valuable sidekick. And he picked up a Class C, which in my practice days I represented him on. There was nothing for the municipal judge to dismiss it. So it is critically important. He was re-traumatized. He was back in trouble with the police, which is not true. The police officer didn't understand at the time it was lewd conduct. He had relieved himself in the alley behind his house because he thought it was better than... I can't remember what his logical thinking, truly logical thinking was. I mean, these wonderful humans are just sick. They're extraordinarily intelligent, but they're just off in their perspective when not medicated. And so this was quite logical. I can't remember what it was, but he was behind his own home, his own apartment, where he needed to go to the restroom. And so then he got picked up, and just his luck that a police officer was driving through the alley. But there was nothing in place for the judge to dismiss the case. And so it is so needed, because then he had re-traumatization, but also a criminal record. These things are not automatically expunged. And, you know, a lot of our kids, individuals are not able to get the records expunged. They simply don't follow through. Now, he's affected in his housing, in his ability to get medication from his LMHA. So hats off, and thank you to this honorable commission.
Can I have it back just 1 second? I want to.
Yeah, the name.
I've got the name.
We have to stop.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Me and I'll give you the name.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Judge Yolanda Huff. I preside over County Court 12 in Bexar County. It is a criminal misdemeanor bench. And I also preside over the mental health court in Bexar County. Now I am running I am running 4 dockets of the mental health court. My large docket is on Mondays. We have a PTD docket that meets every other Thursday, and my whole team fills the felony PTD docket that just got started about 1.5 years ago during COVID. And I also have a recall docket on Friday, so I'm indeed busy. Now, these past 2 years in COVID, I have never administratively discharged as many people from my mental health court as I have admitted. So many people came in. My numbers for all those 4 dockets are upwards over 100, which means that we're going to tap out soon, Gilbert, if we don't get more money. But over 100 people, it was just something about COVID that the defense attorneys were sending so many people to the mental health court, but that Zoom was just terrible for our mental health court. We did the best we could. We pivoted. We tried to do incentives, and it's just, anyway, we're back to in person now, so things are going well. We're back up to speed. All of my dockets are back in person now. Thank you, OCA, that we all did what we could during COVID, and I think that I'm so glad that we're back in person now and that things seem to be getting better in Bexar County. And it really did. I went from 2 dockets before COVID to now running 4 dockets of mental health court. Also, earlier, Kama touched on this, the 1622, because right before COVID, there was a 1622 committee formed in Bexar County. Judge Zumba was really instrumental in getting that up and running. And for 2 years, we really just streamlined the whole 1622 process. I say that to say that it kind of subdued for a while, but we're back up to running it again. And for everybody, we really are going to run these 4 seminars of the 1622, and each seminar is going to reach a different audience, one for the court, one for the audience of other counties that would like to know what we did and how we did it. So that's going to be after the new year, we're back on track to get these. This is something we had talked about a couple of months ago, but a lot of other things and getting back person and my jury docket being big, we weren't able, but we're back on track now. So definitely counties that want to know what their county did, they want to understand how they can do that in their county, we invite everyone to come to this. We're going to have the seminars in person, but the goal is to stream them also. And I will invite anyone in the county from Bexar County, Texas, all over that we want to see what we're doing there. Another thing is I want to make an announcement about in Bexar County, we're having the 20th annual Bexar County Behavioral Health and Wellness Conference, and this conference is for people living with mental health conditions or substance abuse for their loved ones and caregivers. It's free. The keynote speaker luncheon is free. First come, first serve. It's for 200 people. So it's in Bexar County. Anyone can. I can send anyone the link. I spoke at it a while back before COVID. Me and the 5 county court, special court judges will be speaking at it in a panel. I'm inviting everyone to come to this. So what I did in Bexar County is that we have 14 special courts. We united those special courts and formed the Bexar County Special Courts Coalition, and then we made this resource book, and I've been passing in this book out. I've talked about it. It highlights every judge, every special court, from the Veterans Court to the drug court to the juvenile courts to mental health court. So if anybody, I brought a few with me. If anybody want one, they can have one. First come, first serve. But at this conference, all of the county court, special court judges will be speaking on the panel.
Good morning. My name is Judge Carita, and I sit in El Paso, Texas. I sit, my co-partner, Judge Dominguez, was supposed to give this report, but he went and got himself put in the hospital, so I'm not really prepared with his long report. But I do want to tell you that in El Paso, we're doing a lot of things, but because we are so unique, we sit actually Fort Bliss sits in the middle of our jurisdiction, that it's hard to separate the mental health issues and from the veterans issues. And then just recently, I read in the newspaper that we had 100 migrants that are sleeping on the El Paso streets, and we're so, there are just so many issues, but I know that the different agencies, the courts are trying to work these things out, recognizing the uniqueness of our situation. We had the Walmart shooting 3 years ago, if you remember that, and then so that really brought the issue of mental illness and being proactive about it to the forefront. Our law enforcement agencies have training now to how to recognize mental health issues in individuals that they encounter. The Veterans Court and the drug courts are trying to bridge so that they can serve that population that has mental illnesses and our veterans, because there's a little bit more money, more grants are available in that situation. In fact, this morning, Judge Patricia Baca, who handles our Victims Court, got a $350,000 grant from the federal government. So, I mean, that's you can use that for individuals that are veterans and have mental illness. I have a lot of comfort and faith because Representative Joe Moody is going to be our voice for this committee, so I know that he understands the uniqueness of the far West Texas issues that we have. And another thing is, thank you, Judge Helms. I was thinking of retiring, but it seems like you do more work retired than active, so I think I'll stay where I'm at.
Thank you. My name's Dave Jan. I'm from Denton County. I'm the former judge of Denton County Criminal Court of Law, the judge-elect for the probate court #1, since I don't have an opponent right now. As one of the pilot program coordinator program, as we approach the conclusion of our first year, we've had some successes, identified a lot of areas we need to improve on, but just on behalf of the other judges in the county, we'd like to thank you for that opportunity. I would pass the microphone.
Carlisle, Justice on the 5th Court of Appeals up in Dallas. Two things to congratulate. Number one, the judges whose appeals we administer, Dallas, Collin, Grayson, Hunt, Kaufman, and Rockwall counties, appear to be doing a fantastic job of exercising their discretion in the areas that we administer. Happy to report that. And just totally buoyed by the legislative work we're doing in this committee. And thank you, guys.
Good morning, I'm Judge Tamara Needles, 427th District Court of Travis County, also Chair of the Behavioral Health Criminal Justice Advisory Committee for Travis County. A couple of quick things that we have going on here with David Evans and I on this Travis County Steering Committee, looking at trying to dissect what we do and don't have for Travis County as far as eliminating our jail being any kind of a stopping station whatsoever for those who suffer with mental illness. And so a lot of good work that we anticipate will be in a report by February, I believe, of next year, so something to look forward to. The second is that Behavioral Health Criminal Justice Advisory Committee is hoping by the end of the year to have our first county-wide dashboard with data that the public can research and the transparency that comes with all of that. So looking forward to that. I appreciate it and great to see everybody in person.
Hi, I'm Connie Almeida, and I'm the Director of Behavioral Health Services for Fort Bend County. And we're rather unique because we're actually a county department that reports to Commissioner's Court, but of course works very closely with the justice system. So we provide the forensic service to the courts as well as competency evaluation, sanity, fitness to proceed, but also some services. We do a lot of training around trauma, and I won't get into all the details, but I'm really delighted to see the focus on children's services. And in Fort Bend County, I'm pushing the focus to start early. Not only does it make great clinical sense, I mean, we know that, but also around public safety and breaking these cycles of abuse and criminal justice involvement. So we're starting it on a small scale where we're actually serving children of those that are involved in the criminal justice system, including mental health courts with TBRI interventions, trust-based relational interventions. So I'm really excited about that work, and I think there's a lot of opportunities there. We know that children of those that are involved in the justice system are at risk, and I think we can really break that cycle by intervening with those children before they come into our systems formally. I also chair the data committee, so Justice Bland, thank you for your comments. We could not do that work without obviously the amazing staff and the work that's being done by the commission, and also Judge Huff's leadership on what they've done in Bear County. So thank you.
I'm Tim Bray. I'm the Vice President for Justice and Health at the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute. I've got the distinct honor of sitting in today for the brain trust that is Andy Keller and Tony Fabello. So I appreciate them letting me come and do this. Combined, that's right. Along what you were saying, Dr. Almeida, about the kids services and the importance of that, I hope you all saw the recent announcement that the donation from Children's Health in Dallas to the project for the new state hospital up there, they have added resources to build 100 beds into that project for children's inpatient beds. That is going to be a tremendous asset for the state of Texas. So really exciting there. As Meadows looks to sort of developing our Center for Justice and Health and collecting all of our justice and health related projects, we're really looking at projects that complement and support the work that this body is doing, as well as work that HHSC is doing in forensics. And you know, one of the projects that that the JCMH and HHSC have been working on is the sequential intercept mapping. And one of the things that Meadows has done is done some mapping in the child and adolescent and family services realm, but we'd like to look at sort of what we call it SIM 2.0, is supporting sort of what comes next for those jurisdictions that go through the mapping and understand what they have and what they need. What comes next, and where we can come in and help with data-driven, data-informed best practices to help build in those services along the way to fill in some of those gaps. We're looking at building out a roadmap in the first 48 hours of magistration. And sort of what that looks like in terms of bringing all of those pieces together for legal advocacy, assessment, and screening for people with mental health, access to care. What does all of that look like together within that first 48 hours? And that's something that we're going to be reaching out to many of you to get thoughts on where to focus and where our best efforts can be for that. Lastly, we're working on implementing a person-centered approach to triage, call center triage, right? So 911, 988 call centers, implementing research that shows if you center the person in that process through specific questions on their risk, from the person's perspective, that you will get a better assessment of where that person is, the risk of harm that they pose to themselves or others. And it also includes the side effect of increasing procedural justice, that person feels centered in that process and that they feel heard, more importantly.
My name is James Rasmussen. I'm the Chief Public Defender of Wichita County, and Wichita County is a recent recipient of a expansion grant by the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, and we've really, that commission has helped us over the years. It's the third grant we've had, which allowed us to expand and improve our services specifically to mental health. Now with an additional staff person, we have people that can be involved in the trial process and especially dealing with people that have been restored and get them to court before they revert back, which is a problem that we've had, and we hope to address that. We're in the fourth year of a diversion grant where we have a staff of attorneys and investigators that basically do our intake to earmark people that may have mental health problems and to divert them outside the criminal justice system. And they also handle our community supervision revocation docket, which the judges, I will say the district judges have loved during the COVID time because they can continue to move the revocation docket even when you don't have a trial to worry about. But you got to keep people moving, and this diversion staff has done that. And then I want to thank the legislature. I listened to the legislative proposals by Professor Shannon and Judge Carr, and I would encourage you to keep up the good work. And if you can think of anything else that will help, we'll certainly offer our support to that. And I want to thank you for that.
All right, we're going to go ahead. We've got Representative Moody here. Thank you so much, sir. And he is going to give us a lengthy report, and to do him justice, we're going to go ahead and break for lunch. We're going to start right back up exactly at 12:30, and lunch is out in the foyer. You're not allowed to bring food back into this room, so everybody just take a quick break, and we'll reconvene in about 30 minutes.
after that as a criminal defense lawyer. You get to stand up here and do this all the time, but anyway, so I'll pretend for a day that I'm still a litigator. I might do some voir dire, how do we say it? I just remember Dean Shannon had a whole bit about what's the proper way to say that, and I still don't know that I know. So I just call it jury selection. I can't mispronounce that. And also, it's been so long since I've gotten out of law school, and Dean Shannon would know this because I was there with him at Texas Tech. When I started in law school, I had hair down to the middle of my back, and I had kind of a short crop goatee. And God does funny things, and so it's kind of taken away my options up top, but it's somehow figured out that I can grow a longer beard now. So I'm just going to go with whatever I'm able to pull off. I am very grateful for the invitation, and actually just to be able to sit with this group since its inception has been amazing. Had a couple of different speakers appoint me to this post as a member of the Texas House, and so I think it's one of these things. I was talking to Sonny Gaines a second ago about how legislatively sometimes we can look at it. It took 3 sessions to get this done, or it took 4 sessions to get that done. It seems very slow, but the state of Texas is a large ship, and it is hard to turn a ship of this size. But when you do get it pointed in the direction, the great thing is you're carrying a lot with you. And so when you do get it turned, and this is a group that is turning that ship of state slowly and steadily into the right direction. And so I actually think in a very legislatively short period of time, this group has advocated and succeeded in ways that maybe we never even imagined, and have so much more that we can do. So I'm grateful for that opportunity, and to get to do some of this work on the legislative side when we flip from recommendations into action items. And whether I like it or not, in just a few months, we're going to bring the gavel down on the 88th session. It'll be on January 10th, the day after my birthday. No better place to celebrate your birthday than getting ready to go through one regular session, and that's it. I hope. I'm going to take my time today to talk about the legislative process. So before I do that, I want to kind of understand the lay of the land in the room, because I don't want to, you can gloss over certain points, maybe drill into other more finer points and nuanced issues about the legislative process. So anyone here, maybe just by show of hands, work as staff, has worked as staff in the legislature at any point in their career? Well, Rachel, Rachel's my legislative director, so I hope she's got. All right, so a couple of people. And then worked for an agency that interacts significantly with the legislature. Okay. Now, I know we have a lot of judges who were, just normal lawyers at some point. Any of y'all in your practice work on legislative issues or anything like that as attorneys? Okay, so pretty good mix. Folks. Anybody as just a passionate advocate for something work specifically with a legislator on a particular piece of legislation to work past it? Okay. I was going to say, I think you've been on every single one. Let me ask, what was the bill that you worked on, or name one of them, because my guess is you've probably done multiple. Oh. Specialty course, yeah. Yep. I remember that bill well. No, that's awesome. And that's kind of what I want to get a sense of is I've been very fortunate in my life. I kind of grew up in the House. I was elected at 27 when I used to be young. And I've really tried to try to become a real student of the rules. It's a very peculiar process, and our rules are very specific to what we do. And just like statutes and rules and things that are interpreted in the courtroom, depending on who's sitting up at the rostrum, sometimes those rules are interpreted differently too. And so you have to be able to be nimble and flexible and be able to figure out different ways to get things done and be creative. Sometimes it's not just about me holding up a bill that has my name on it and trying to pass it. I'm going to get it over here, get to the Senate, then have someone over there pick it up. Sometimes, depending on what the issue is, you're going to work with someone who is on a committee that maybe makes more sense for that policy issue, or you work with an author just to get it on as an amendment, or if you know it's going to go to, I'm going to get to all these terms, if you go to conference committee on something, then you can magically make your bill appear as language that didn't exist anywhere in the process, but now is very close to the finish line. So those are all the different things that I try to really kind of get good at, and then also try to teach folks as they come into the legislature about that process. Because ultimately, when people like me walk out of the building, like I said, after 140 days, and then more than that, when I walk away, I want to think that I succeeded on behalf of my community. And I want to think that I had a good session, whatever that means. And when I talk to freshman legislators, and I do this every session, I go meet with them in their office to talk to them and their staff, and ask them, what does a successful session look like to you? Because for them, it may be the mud back home has to get created. That's the most important thing that we got to get done because of the development issues that we have in our community. Okay, all right. Well, maybe someone I want to expand, this service or that service. I want to change this law because we had this horrific case back home, and you have that quite a bit. And so, understanding what success looks like for different people is always a good way to navigate in the House, because you can figure out how you can succeed in your own path, because if they feel good that they're succeeding, they're more likely to try to figure out. And I want to try to speak very candidly with you here today. And if you have any questions, please interject, because I'll answer whatever you'd like to ask. Because the work of politics in the legislature is a people-driven business, and so getting policy through that maze can be very much just understanding the people. A mentor of mine told me, if you do not understand the people that you work with and their lives outside of the Capitol, you will never get done the work that you want to do inside the Capitol. And that's very true. Knowing what your colleagues are going through and what drives them, what moves them, also what maybe is hindering them, those are the types of things that are important. So when you're advocating for certain legislation and you have different relationships, people from all around the state, you're going to have those relationships, and maybe you can utilize those and lift policy that the group has talked about through those personal relationships and make sure that maybe you can hopefully navigate those. I think it's an important, the people part of those businesses is very important. Things that you can look for, and always best to look to the past as a good indicator of what could happen in the future. If you get a bill idea and a concept that you couldn't find anyone even to draft and author and file, that's problematic. That's not a good sign. It doesn't mean that its day is not going to come. It just means you've got a lot of work to do, and people are shopping an enormous amount of bills, particularly right now, and then up until the filing deadline. Members can officially start filing bills, I believe, was it the day after? It's sometime after the election. It's like a day after the election, but those are things to look at, as you're reevaluating, and with a group like ours, you have a track record to look at, right? We've looked at this policy before, we've seen what happened before, did the bill move? That's the other thing, when you're picking bill authors, right? Maybe look to see, I know this can be hard for you to believe, but sometimes some members are more favored by leadership than others. There's no disrespect to that particular member, because they probably do some damn good work, but it's just not their session. That does happen. I know, it's hard to believe. And also, I'll say very candidly, I was, certainly part of a group that made some waves last year? God, it seems like 10 years ago. going to Washington DC. Part of that was having my position as Speaker Pro Tem removed, mainly because the Speaker did not have the ability to remove any chairs. They don't have that authority. You don't actually want to give that authority to the Speaker, because then they can maneuver stuff. You see, well, in the House. In the Senate, they do have that. They can pluck people in and out of their chairs during session, which I think is extremely manipulative and is a bad consolidation of power. But in the House, we don't have that. And so once you appoint the chairs, you cannot move them away. However, according to the rules, the Speaker pro tem serves at the pleasure of the Speaker. And there was a lot of political pressure at that moment to do something to those Democrats that were causing so many problems. And I'm not going to speak very partisan-wise here, because we're all over the spectrum politically, and we're all just trying to get done policy. But I'm trying to give you a sense of those things. Now, do I have bad relationships and leadership? Absolutely not. But I understood the politics of that moment, and those are sacrifices and those are things that happen. But those are the types of things to look at. Which committees did people go to? Or you have junior committees, more plum assignments. No disrespect to certain committees, but I remember when I was asked to chair, Speaker Strauss asked me to chair the Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence, and I love it. I love the policy. It's what I want to do. It was the pinnacle of what I thought could be my career in the House. This was it. And then I looked at the membership that they gave me, and it was everybody that I was told was on the outs with Speaker Strauss. And I was like, oh, I'm in the punishment committee. You know what has given me the opportunity to do, though? Jeff Leach and I, a Republican from Plano, who's now a chairman, who's not on the outs with anybody, he and I created a bipartisan criminal justice reform caucus that is an equal number of Republican and Democrat, and it was built that way purposefully. And every time a Democrat wants to join, you go, well, have you talked to one of your Republican colleagues to bring them in? A Republican wants to join, we're going to ask them to go bring a Democratic colleague, the same thing. And we try to build coalitions around policy, and it's been very, very successful, to the point that Dade Phelan, well, and he was a founding member of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus before he was Speaker, which tells you about where he wants to go on policy. He created an interim study committee, this legislative interim, that essentially mimics and mirrors the bylaws of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus. So we took a caucus structure and have now institutionalized it into the House as a study committee that's going to hopefully be a catalyst for more reform, more change in criminal justice. So these are the things to look at. Where are the players? Where, where do you think your concept best fits? Have they filed it before? If Sinfonia Thompson has filed your bill for the last 10 sessions, you should not go take that to another member until she tells you you can. That's the type of thing. There's a seniority part of this, there's a respect into the institution, and there's, if people have done the work on something, it is always best to be deferential to them. Now, people in my position should care more about the policy than the personal, than their name on a bill, and I hope that most of my colleagues take that same tact, as I've given away multiple bills because I think it's easier to pass a policy with this one carrying it or that one carrying it. But those are things to look at, is be aware of those, because those can be political landmines too. I found some of those where I saw a senator that I worked with very well, and he had a bill, and I was like, that's a great bill. I'm going to file a version of that bill in the House, and that way we'll have double the chance of success. And I did not ask permission to do that. And he informed me of that multiple times that session. So look at, anyway, I'd go through some of these notes, but you want to look to see kind of the bipartisan nature, the makeup, names on bills. You'll understand if you're a watcher of the legislature, who's authoring, who's joining. So just real 101. There's a primary author, at least in front of primary author, and they can have up to 4 joint authors. That means that they specifically selected that individual's name to be on the bill. That's a strategic decision to make. Co-authors, if they just open a sheet, it just sits in the clerk's office and anyone can go on and sign on to that. And if you see a whole bunch of stuff going on, that means someone's actively working those members to go sign it. So I would say watch what people do, not what they say. And so if someone's telling you, oh, I support your stuff, and they're like, oh, I don't see your name on the co-author sheet, would you mind going? I just want to make sure. I want to be able to tell the people back home that you're for us. Make sure that people's actions match what they say. Again, shocking in politics, people will say things and then actually do different things. So be aware of that. It's a pitfall. I know. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I don't want I don't want to completely take away the idealism of the folks in this room, but know how to navigate that. Let's see what we got. Oh, so Bill 5, you do want to have a legislative council version of a bill. This is a tough note for me to write here as a lawyer, because many times I've gotten in arguments with legislative council that they are drafting my bill incorrectly, and it does not do what they think it does. And sometimes we'll just agree to disagree, and I'll file my own version, and then we'll fix it later. But do know that members are going to look to see if it is not a legislative council version of a bill, it will be a red flag for some people. It means that it wasn't vetted by the staff attorneys at the House. Now, a lot of those attorneys are brand new attorneys, baby lawyers, not that they're not hard workers, but they do make mistakes. I know, shocking. But that is one of those things that people will just generically look as a red flag. If it came out of your brain and didn't go through Ledge Council, they'll have a question about it. These are all typical points. Bill numbers are filed that way. The earlier you have something filed, the lower the bill number, the earlier it can get. Let's see. If it is eligible and gets on a calendar, the bill number may or may not matter at the end of the day. If the subject touches an emergency item, then it does come to the top of the calendar for that particular day. The reason you want to file early and get a low bill number is mainly for the committee process, because you can really flesh out the problems if there are any. And so your bill getting referred means that, so bill filed, then bill referred, and they're referred by number order, well, almost invariably. And they'll go to the committee. That means the member can ask for the bill to be heard. So the quicker it's there, the lower the number, the quicker you can at least ask for a hearing. And if they don't give you a hearing in those first couple of weeks, and yours is one of the first bills over there, okay, right, that's sign number one, because they're looking for something to do. Sign number one that maybe there's an issue. So you start to essentially figure it out if you're going to have some problems. Witness testimony is very important. I think this group does very good, but when you have a bill coming forward in a committee, I think it's best, particularly, we touch a lot of the bills will go through criminal jurisprudence. Where else do our bills will go through? We've had some go to state affairs from ours. Yeah. Corrections, that's true. So criminal jurisprudence is one of the busiest committees in the House. It has a number, it's either second, third, or fourth every session, a number of bills that go to that committee. Others saying corrections, not as much. But it usually means those nights are long nights, 12, 14, 16-hour hearings. So when your bill, you're going to have members of the public come and testify whether you planned on it or not on your policy. So for your experts, what I would do is I would coordinate with the author of the bill and with the committee chair if they can, particularly if that member's on the committee, to say, hey, can we get my witnesses to go first? And so the judge is the expert on this. Let's get 2 or 3 solid subject matter experts, and then let the public commentary fall where it may. And if people really want to weigh in, they can drop cards in support of, hey, it's important to have Meadows show up as a supporter of this, but maybe they're not the best to lead on testimony, or whatever the case may be. And usually you will see any opposition at that point. If it comes forward, you'll see it in form of either people dropping cards against, people saying they're against it but not testifying, or you'll see sometimes, and that's the first bullet point here, is to pay attention to member questions. Because if there's someone that institutionally has a problem with what you're doing, it's probably going to find its way into a question during the committee process. You can typically tell if someone's hostile to whatever you're doing just by the way they're asking their questions. And so that's something to just take note of. And in the House, not the Senate, I'll give a little bit of distinction on the Senate side. In the House, bills usually are heard one week, and at the next meeting, if they're ready to go, they're voted out. So if you get to the next meeting and your bill isn't voted out, all right, there's another red flag. Something is not good. In the Senate, because they don't have any real organic conversation or debate. Everything is preordained and done behind closed doors. If your bill is given a hearing, it's going to be voted out the same day. I mean, not all the time, but almost all the time. So just getting the hearing is essentially a green light that they're going to vote on the bill. Because senators don't, I mean, they don't want to have any, they don't want to have to have people talk to them about stuff and deal with human beings from across Texas. It's very difficult. There's no senators here, right? No senators here. They have a fantastic process in the Senate. I just don't understand it. If anybody does, can you please let me know? What do we got here? Calendars Committee, which is the committee I serve on as the vice chair, is where this is cloak and dagger stuff. This is where all the mysterious things happen. No, but this is where if a bill's going to come forward, it has to come through here. And unlike the Senate, my favorite institution, the most deliberative body in Texas, where the Calendars Committee is one person. So if your bill's going to make it, you don't got to go through a committee. I've been informed that there's just one person that makes that decision, and I think you probably know who that is. So we'll let that sit over there. In the House Calendars Committee, that's different. And the makeup of the bill, makeup of the calendar, I've served on it twice now as vice chair. It is a very dynamic process, and one that is very strange. There's opportunities to, if I've got a question on a bill and I don't want that coming to the floor, I have a way to advocate for that. It's not done in a hearing like you see, other than when it comes forward and we vote on it, the bills are already on a sheet. And so it's a very, and it changes. I've served under two different chairs. It changes depending on the chair because they're going to run it a certain way. But it's a very peculiar process, and it's one that can be frustrating because some people can pass your bill out of committee, and then they know that it's going to hit a roadblock over a calendar, so they can go, I don't know what happened. We did everything we could. Let me go talk to somebody. You get those people talk around in circles and stuff like that. So be mindful of calendars early, and obviously we're going to have a completely new committee assignments. That's a good tea leaf reading thing, is where, who's on calendars. That's a complete 100% speaker appointment list. And also, it's a good way to read future legislatures, because historically, now there's no rule to this, but historically, calendars has been a breeding ground for future chairs, right? Because part of being in quote-unquote leadership is understanding how to navigate sometimes difficult political situations, and how to work with members to get through that process. So being a chair, you're kind of at the forefront of that. Sometimes you take the heat on it, even though it's not your decision, but you're trying to protect the members of your committee from kind of getting into that fray. In calendars, those members don't get pushed to the very forefront of that, but they do have to feel that political pressure back and forth. And so it's a testing ground typically for future chairs. So that's something when you look institutionally, who are the junior members of the House that are being placed on calendars? Those are the people that are probably being looked at, not guaranteed, but looked at to potentially be chairs in the future. So something to look at and think about. Those are also good members to have carry your bills, because they have some political clout, and sometimes that's short-lived, so take advantage of it. In the Senate, again, there's an intent calendar, but doesn't mean they're going to hear your bill. They can leave it on there for days. They can take it off. They play games with that all the time. It's beyond me. I don't know. It's very undemocratic. Let me see what I want to go into. Just a couple of different things. I'm almost done. Make sure I don't blather on too long. Am I okay on time? Okay. So this. And y'all can ask any questions you want. I'm going to answer honestly as best I can, as long as you don't tell anybody. So I got to make sure that I get the committees I want next session. So you pass a bill out of committee on the calendar, it goes on the floor. Members will come, they can amend it. It usually happens on second reading of a bill. Most things are pretty non-consequential in terms of debate on the floor. There's almost none. It just sails over. But again, it's because the House has rules that we actually follow. And so if you want to amend a bill, it has to be on the subject of the bill. If we're talking about emergency detention orders and the authority of certain individuals within that system, then the amendment that someone comes with can't be about something that's completely off topic, even if it touches on the subject of mental health or suicide prevention. Even though it like maybe touches the general area, you got to be on it. It's called germaneness, and that's very important in the House. Now, when your bill goes to the Senate, they don't have such rules. And so a myriad of things can be placed on any one of your bills, and late in session, it can be devastating to your effort. Because I had a bill once that it was 3 pages long, and it came back across from the Senate, and it was now the omnibus anti-gang bill in the state of Texas, and it was 85 pages long, and it was hyper controversial. But it was a must-pass for a very powerful senator, and so it got tacked onto a very tiny bill that had to do with just recruitment into gangs. And so, those are the types of things that can happen at the end, and it's a give and take. But they don't have those rules. Now, when stuff gets sent back over and has non-germane amendments from the Senate, you're going to put your own bill in peril when it comes back to the House. And I'm looking at it from a House perspective because that's where I come from. But those are things to be mindful of. They can amend. And when it comes back, what the House authors should do, if they really don't like something that's controversial, they'll just say, we're going to reject Senate amendments, we're going to go to conference committee. And then 5 members from the House and 5 members from the Senate will get together, and they'll figure out the differences, and hopefully you get to something where you're not going to blow up the entire effort. Now, that doesn't always happen, but it gives you the opportunity to. If you're happy with the Senate amendment, sometimes you just didn't get something done in the House, and you're like, look, it'll just be easier to get it done when it gets to the Senate. You fix it over there, you can accept the Senate amendments, and off it goes. And so it's good to go. Those are the different mechanics at the end. That's that magical time, though, when you're in conference, where you can go outside the bounds, which means the item neither showed up in the House version or the Senate version, but it's magically going to manifest itself in this wonderful place, conference committee, and your bill that didn't even get a hearing in committee, and you got jammed up because someone was mad at you because you wrote a tweet about them. Now your bill is going to pass, and it passes in the form that your name's never on it. You may not even been on the conference committee, but you got it done because you figured out how to use those mechanics. Those are the types of things that you got to figure out which members have the skills to do those things and to utilize those pressure points, particularly late in session, because the pressure points start to go away, right? For a member like me, once I start seeing these bills are dead or whatever, you're losing leverage on me because most this stuff is faltering, and so leverage points come around the budget, so the budget's usually held a little bit because it becomes a huge leverage point for everybody that they can utilize. To kind of keep order. And so those are things, once the budget breaks, everything kind of floods after that in session. 2 points, and then I'm going to close with just a little bit of commentary about the legislature. But these are great websites. I know you all are familiar with them, but if you want to follow a bill, you can track it. It'll send you alerts, whatever part of the process it's going through. All those things are very, very good to know, and it'll allow you to understand the process a little bit better if maybe you don't have the experience going through the legislative process. And then the top link there is one that'll go through everything I just said, but in a way that makes sense. And I saw there is a chart on how a bill becomes a law that is on this website. Is that the link to it? Oh, so they have this thing that's like for grade school kids. It's supposed to show them how a bill becomes a law. I was like, it's like 100 different arrows going different ways. And I was like, oh, this is how a bill doesn't become a law. Got it. So as you know, the legislature is, and this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, this is a large state. Our state's economy is one of the largest in the world. It is not meant to move rapidly. It is meant to move slowly. It is meant to be, I was going to say thoughtful, but that's probably not always true. But it is meant to steer slowly, and it is not supposed to rapidly move from one end of the pendulum to swing the pendulum very quickly. That's not healthy. And when you think about the people that we serve out in our communities, rapid changes in policy sometimes are necessary, but that is usually the exception to the rule. Slow changes are the better way to create a more predictable system and one that is built to succeed for the long term, even though that is frustrating in our, our instant gratification culture. Sometimes it's going to take 5 to 7 years to get something done, but the product is going to be 10 times better for the 50 years after that. So those are things to think about. I will leave you with this, and it's been very clear in my entire speech that the largest difference in the legislature and the biggest fights in the legislature are not between Democrats and Republicans. They're between the House and the Senate. So that dynamic is one that you really don't understand until you dig into it. And that will hang up your bill more than the Democrat-Republican fight, because at the end of session, when tempers are short and people's bills are dead, and they can take something hostage that was your policy proposal, and you're this close to getting it across the finish line, but the person that's carrying it is someone that did them wrong, you'd be surprised that those types of petty politics do arise in the final days of the legislature. Now, cooler heads typically do prevail. I can't even use that anymore. Hold on. Cooler heads can prevail. I'll put it that way. They can, and they should. And I think that's actually what a group like this can do really well, because of the wealth of experience and the diversity of your experiences, is that we need to project that in our own places, right? Whether it be in our courtrooms or otherwise. We need to project more of the civility in policy making and in politics. I mean, politics intersects with policy making. But we have come to a point, and this is my last little soapbox portion, we've come to a point, I think, in Texas, we used to point to D.C. and say, well, we're not that. We're not that. At least we're not that. We work together. We sit together. We know how to get things done. This is a group of folks that does the work and doesn't just play politics. That space, that middle ground for people to work in, has become narrower and narrower and narrower. It is incumbent upon all of us in our corners of the world to elbow that out. We're a better place and a better state when you have a broader middle for people to work together on issues. People aren't going to vilify one another just because they have policy differences. Now that may be, I may be working on a fool's errand here. Maybe that's just where we are in politics, that we're in the politics of divisiveness. I reject that. I think we can always do better. We can always do better, but it starts with us projecting that into our spheres of influence wherever we can. And that's something that I try to talk to every group about, no matter what their concerns are about the legislature, because it is growing increasingly more difficult. And we've seen a time now where people see leadership as who can be the loudest in an echo chamber, right? Well, that's not leadership. In fact, I actually don't like the word leadership. I like the word stewardship. I'm transitory in this. My picture will be yellowing in the basement in no time. We are stewards of this. And a real steward, or if you want to use the word leader, is someone that can sit at the table with someone that they disagree with strongly on an issue and be asked to come up with a solution, and they emerge from that room successful. That's leadership, right? Not just those who can shout the loudest. So that's what I'm going to leave you with, is that call to action in your process, in the work that we're doing, in the advocacy that we're doing. Let's call people to be better in this process. Because if we all move in that direction, then we can start to edge back into a space where we don't have to be hyper-partisan or vilify people just because they don't sit in the same space that we do politically or ideologically or policy-wise. So that's my call to action. I appreciate y'all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for Representative Moody germane to his speech today?
I talked about a lot of stuff. You're very welcome. I'll tell you real quick, I think I'd always try to carry myself this way, but, and not talking to Judge Carita at lunch, when the shooting on August 3rd happened in El Paso, and was very much part of hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric about my community, about the border, I had to look at myself. And I could have been angry, and I could have yelled back and shouted back and said nasty things. I said, but that is what drives us further towards worse outcomes. And so I have very intentionally tried to be as genuine as I can and lead with love rather than that emotion, because I think you're better off when you do it that way.
If a bill doesn't, I'm sorry, Grace Uzwamba from Brooklyn. If your bill doesn't get passed, or if you're not there to champion your bill, what happens?
If it doesn't get passed in a particular session or like out of committee?
In any part of the process?
I mean, if the bill is filed and it's been heard, it's alive, right? There's certain deadlines that you have to meet to keep it going, and then you have to always look, the more chances you give yourself of passage, the better. So have a House version, have a Senate version, be looking for other bills that we call, vehicles for our bill to find a ride on, right? Because maybe that bill is going to move. So it's really not dead until all the conference committees are done, because you can try to figure out ways to tack it on. But you got to get creative. It's not the simple path of passing a bill and moving it through the process is just one of them. The more complex routes are sometimes somewhere where you get some of the biggest policy, I want to say some of the biggest mental health policy we got out of a conference committee report going outside the bounds during the 19 session, because that other bill was killed on the floor on a point of order, correct? Yes. That may have been orchestrated. I don't know. I can't tell. I can't. I think I did sign an NDA on that. Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So I used to teach candidate development program school, and one of my assignments was to have my class go research and look at bills to just see what type of partisanship there really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what their takeaway, and I'd like to hear if you agree with this, is that the majority of what y'all do, about 80%, you collaborate and do agree on, and it's maybe 20% that we see in the media that y'all are not agreeing on. Do you think that's too high of a percentage?
I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, most days on the floor, you're not going to see a major firefight. Last session may have been a little bit of an exception to that, and I think that was a function of everything got jammed into the very last bit of session because of COVID and Winter Storm Uri and all those other, and so all those things really compressed session where we had some pretty volatile legislation on the floor day after day. That is not typical. But yeah, I think most of the stuff that we pass through there sails through without any objection. You do have people that operate as bomb throwers, and that's what they're there to do. They're there to disrupt the process. And I would encourage you to, well, I'll leave it at that. So they serve a purpose too. They serve a purpose because people come in the door and you go, see, don't act like that person. That person is not getting anything done. So, yeah, I think that's an accurate statement.
We thank you for coming today and sharing with us your knowledge and advice and wisdom about the legislative process, and also just thank you so much for partnering with us on areas of mutual interest. The commission is very appreciative of that. And we'll just give you a round of applause. And all right, so we're going to pick back up. We passed over the financial report because Patrick Passmore was helping one of our members, and so Patrick.
Thank you, Justice Bland. Sorry I was late this morning, you all. I'm Patrick Passmore. I'm the finance manager for the JCMH. Just briefly, I know it's after lunch and people don't typically like to hear about numbers any part of the day, but just stay awake with me for a little bit. We're going to go over just our 2022 numbers. This is going to be found on page tab 5, and if you're looking at our digital version, it'll be on page 38. So just briefly, we're going to start right up at the top there with our available funds, and this is showing for the biennium 2022-2023. We carried forward in 21 just over 33,000 to be used for encumbrances. We did well with our appropriation in 21, lapsing less than $1,500. So, and I think that we could all agree that those funds went they were very well spent. Coming into 2023, excuse me, so our 2022 current actuals are there in the middle matrix. We currently have outstanding balances of $349,000. All of those, with the exception of $6,963, are going to be spent in fiscal year 2022. That remaining $7,000 is going to go into our 2023 budget for projects that we have allocated. Our 2023 budget at this time is complete. It's just not finalized. And I apologize for that. We will get to it at our next executive committee meeting and provide you an update for that the next time we all meet. Moving on down to I'm going to just mention our grants. Our grantees for FY 2022, most of which were awarded no-cost extensions due to COVID-19 and then Delta and so on. We finally have wrapped those up, some as far back as 2020. Those grantees have until October 15th to file their final reports. And so you will also be receiving more information on the outcomes of those projects at our next meeting, and we'll include them in the meeting notebook. It's going to take a little bit longer, but I'm happy to say that the Supreme Court of Texas submitted an exceptional item in its 88th regular session legislative appropriation request on behalf of the JCMH for additional funding for the children's mental health program that Justice Huddle spoke about this morning. The additional funds requested and the projects proposed are needed to expand the knowledge through training of our judges, lawyers, mental health professionals, school counselors, county leaders, etc., that may encounter children dealing with these mental health issues. These funds are needed to provide adequate, up-to-date resources and information from each county, as Liz was talking about in the state with her innovations map. And we're really hoping that with these additional funds, that innovations map won't only be, we'll have a specialty section for children and youth. Let's see, I couldn't agree more. I wrote these notes before I didn't get to hear Justice Huddle say her comments, but I think.
Yeah, we did. And so this is a joint effort for the Judicial Commission on Mental Health and the Children's Commission. And so we're going to ask for this funding to advance that work.
So I couldn't agree more with Justice Huddle's comments about how vast and complex the issues in dealing with children and mental health are, and that the solutions will take time and coordination, and I will add to that money also. So that's what we're trying to do here. It requires the expertise and dedication from everyone in this room and those on the Children's Commission to continue the conversation and work towards and follow through with these results. I just happened to be sitting next to Judge Specia, who is a longtime Children's Commission participant and now on the Mental Health Commission. So that just goes to show, like, the expertise and stuff in this room could really bring this together. It's a natural crossroads. So we have 4 potential projects that would be funded through this exceptional item request. The total request is going to be $500,000 for the 24-25 biennium, so that'd be $250,000 for each year. First, we would have youth systems sequential intercept model mappings. There's been much discussion today about the sequential intercept mappings. but this one would be more directed towards youth and children. At this time, JCMH is trained to facilitate those mappings through PRA, Policy Research Associates, but they're mostly aimed at adults. I think we've done one juvenile in Denton County. So with the JCMH and the Children's Commission staff combined, we could increase the capacity for this technical assistance to 5 to 7 additional counties serving youth courts per year. Second, the annual Youth Summit on Mental Health. As you're aware, the JCMH hosts an annual judicial summit on mental health that focuses on education regarding adult mental health laws and best practices. So during the summit, the JCMH produces this content, subject matter, and the subject matter is so great for this content that it merits a separate conference for the children's. The Youth Annual Summit on Mental Health could be the early part of the week, and the latter part of the week could focus on the adult mental health needs. And that would allow the participants to choose, focus their area. If you want to attend both, we'd love to have you if we have space, which, again, costs money. So that's... So then we got 2 more here, the Children's Mental Health Education and Workshops. Texas judges and attorneys have few tools and resources to assist with their understanding of how to navigate mental health challenges for children and youth. Implications for youth who are involved with both the juvenile justice and child welfare systems and the complex intersection of behavioral health and the legal system. This is critical. This knowledge is critical to change the trajectory of struggling youth. And in light of this significant increase of children and youth with serious mental health challenges in the system, the demand is at an all-time high for more educational videos, roundtables, and workshops to help learn the law, system processes and limitations, and approaches to better serve youth with adverse childhood experiences. And finally, again, with this portion would directly go to the innovations map. The JCMH Innovations Map highlights the efforts of Texas courts to improve their response to local mental health challenges by implementing or utilizing local programs. These innovative strategies and resources for anyone interested in replicating or improving their own community. And currently, this map is focused on resources for adults. Additional funding would allow the creation of entries that are youth-focused so that judges and other stakeholders have access to this information about organizations serving the youth. So, I'm not, I guess Representative Moody left, but I was going to say, I'm not looking at Rep. Moody for any...
Right, so this is going to be part of the overall budget proposal that we're going to submit. Thank you, Patrick. And I think before the lunch break, we left off with Judge Kazin. So for any, and that doesn't mean you have to make an announcement. Yeah. But I don't want to overlook the people that we didn't hear from before lunch with any announcements.
Well, what I'll add has really nothing to do with our meeting today, but except in an unrelated sense. But
did you hear earlier that talk about germane? We try for that too.
It's quasi germane. Loving County, one of the counties that does not have a representative. I just looked it up. It has a population of 64, which is down from the last sentence. But my brother-in-law is the county attorney for Loving County. So I will see what I can do to make sure they protect. And it is the least populated county in the entire United States. And I will try to get them represented.
Judge Carr is going to deliver Loving County for us. And we have an online option. So if he doesn't want to escape the beautiful world of more animals than people, he can do it online.
So I'll be really quick. Loved hearing all the stories of all the wonderful things people are doing, and it's great and it's wonderful. I just want to make sure that we are still all realizing how limited resources that we have, and that we still have a wait list that's over 2,500 people. People are waiting 2 years sitting in jail to get to a state hospital or some other type of facility. We don't have staff to fill the facilities that we currently have. We're 800 beds short at the state hospitals right now. So as much as we're doing and talking about building all these other places, we need to be able to support the places that we currently have and figure out ways to divert people into some of these other community-based settings. And I did want to tout some of the step-down units that have started that I think are a great movement in that direction.
Great, thanks. And Beth and I didn't talk about this before, but one of the things I wanted to add that I did not think to tack on at the end of the legislative report is that, particularly with some of our proposals to try and push more people, particularly nonviolent offenders, out of the criminal justice system and into civil commitment and hopefully expanding outpatient competency restoration, the supports and resources have to be there. We're just going to create more problems if we say, all right, well, we're going to try and move from criminal to civil if we don't have capacity in the civil system and with the dockets for outpatient competency restoration. I know as a body, we don't fund and we can't recommend funding, but let's be mindful of that somewhere in our broader recommendations is that the state has to support the services. And this, talking to Commissioner Gaines at lunch too, workforce challenges are a piece of that too. And so we hope that message can go forward to the legislature to remind them that we can't just pay rates that might have been appropriate 10 years ago in the light that it's A, 10 years later, B, inflation, and there are a lot of other job opportunities out there. And so to work in these high-intensity kinds of positions is critical. You know, on a couple of other things, Judge Kazin is helping host, right, in mid-October, a national AOT conference that the Treatment Advocacy Center from the DC area is doing, and so that's coming up. And then I've told the group in the past, I've been a part of a model code drafting effort co-chaired by Judge Leifman from Miami and Judge Mack from Michigan, and I think we're about at the end of that. And so when there's a good PDF type link, I want to share it with this body because it has a number of proposals for rethinking some of the commitment standards. Our statutes aren't far off that, but some thoughtful work there, as well as some criminal justice pathways that go beyond what we've done. And that might be, I've talked to Judge Specia, maybe something for the long-term planning committee, think about how can we as a body look at those and see if there's some pieces that we want to go forward with or a lot, or big pieces. So thanks.
All right, and then we may have anyone from the Collaborative Council that has an announcement. Let's do this side first, if anybody. Okay, this side.
Hi, my name's Angelita Hunter. I am from the city of McKinney. I just wanted to make an announcement saying that what y'all are doing is working these SIMs that y'all are having in Grayson County. I'm from North Texas. We don't normally have that many people that are involved with the JCMH. We do now. We have lots of people reaching out, asking more about it. I've taken these books to children advocacy centers, EMT, school counselors, and so I just wanted to report North Texas, the word is getting out, and kind of what Judge Moore had said, we're just kind of the filter for all of that, all the great work that's going on here, and I just wanted to report that.
Hello, my name is Greg Hanch. I serve as the Executive Director of NAMI Texas. I want to commend the JCMH staff for their work on the summit. I've always felt one of the best things we can do as professionals working in this space is avail ourselves of the perspectives of people with lived experience. Because if people have lived it, they know it from a very personal perspective. So we should tap into that by learning from and engaging with them. The JCMH Summit and JCMH as a whole does a great job doing that. Lived experience can be found throughout the Summit program, and I thank JCMH for that. Less than 2 hours after Judge Spicia delivers the closing remarks at the Summit, the NAMI Texas Annual Conference begins, 25 minutes away in Frisco. A little self-promotion, can't miss the opportunity. I want to tell you just a little bit about the conference, I'll be quick. Our goal with this conference is to bring together stakeholders to create a community of hope and healing for individuals and families affected by mental illness. I recently hit 10 years with NAMI Texas. As I look around the room, I see numerous people who have supported us and who have been involved with our conference. I see past keynote speakers like Sonia Gaines and Elise Ferguson. I see past awardees, Adrian Kennedy, Judge Carr, Kim Ogg's office. In 2020, Chief Justice Nathan Hecht and Presiding Judge Sharon Keller were awarded our Charlie H. Shannon Advocate for Justice Award, named after Brian's father. Their leadership on mental health through this commission is the very reason that we gave them that award. I may be a little biased, but I believe that the NAMI Texas Conference is the event of the year for the Texas mental health community. We have 2 world-class keynote speakers, including Andy Keller, who we're all familiar with, and Liz Mackingvale, who is an international leader on obsessive-compulsive disorder. Her father is Mattress Mac. We have 24 workshops, exhibitors, continuing education, awards, and much more. We are blessed this year to be in the same metropolitan area as the JCMH Summit, and we're getting started right after your summit ends. So please, I implore you to stick around DFW for another 36 hours to enjoy the NAMI Texas Conference. The jury is still out, wink, wink, on whether large in-person events can be successful in the pandemic era. We could really use your support. I can already tell you that the JCMH presence at our conference will be strong. Please help us make it even stronger. And if you want to refer to the NAMI Texas Conference as the unofficial after party of the JCMH Summit, I don't have a problem with that. Thank you all so much. You can learn more about our conference at namitexas.org.
Can you hear me? Okay. I don't like following Greg because I'm not going to be as positive. Sorry. So I just wanted to piggyback on Beth Mitchell and Brian Shannon, and I did not hear, I know that Brian Shannon mentioned the number over 2,500. I was listening from home at the time, so I don't know if Dr. Simpson was able to say actual numbers. Are we able to say the actual number with the MSU breakout? Okay, so it's over 2,500, and the MSU is about 1,000 now. So I do want to really make everybody understand that last I heard when Scott Shacklin presented, we had 700 beds offline in the state hospital system. Over 700 people in the state hospital system are the 365 plus day population, our long-term population. We have step-down pilots. I believe there are 4. We have capacity for 26 people. It is so important that every time we have these conversations, we use real numbers. They're real people. The last I heard, we were serving 18 people. I recently had a case sent to me. The person was too low functioning, they would not be making a referral to the step-down. This is a pattern of practice. So I want you all to know that of those 700 people, we need to be talking about people who do have long-term needs. They're in your courtrooms, they're in your jails, they're in your state hospital. It's very hard to move people when we don't have what we need on the back end. The person that I dealt with was not referred to the step-down, was released to a boarding care. I was sending his picture to APD and Travis County Sheriff's Office within 2 hours of transfer. So this is the reality, and if there's a direct correlation to not paying your workforce. So everything we talk about in here, it actually doesn't make much of a difference because we don't have the person to call, the person to respond, or the place to go. We can't staff them. I've sent you all articles about the IDD population, that tremendous wait list. There is a direct correlation. Every case that I can name off the top of my head, and I have a good 20 right now I could list off, are on the MSU list, and they're IDD and SMI. They should have never gotten to the system, and they will be waiting for a very long time. And when you pay someone $8 in a group home, and all these providers have to close every single day,
It is a huge issue. So I know that all of you are connected. Speak to the people in your communities. Speak to your legislators. Think about who you're voting for, who's asking these questions, because we do have to fund this. And as soon as I leave here, I am going over to Senator Colcourt's office. So I just, and I also want to bring to your attention this highest needs population, they're level 4 in the community, assertive community treatment, or what we did with SB 292, forensic assertive community treatment. We cannot keep those teams staffed. There was an OIG report a year ago because we don't have the resources. And the morale on the behavioral health side, the providers, is so low because there is no continuum. So have that conversation, please, with everybody, because you cannot get anywhere. It's Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. So thank you all. I really appreciate everyone in this space.
Thank you. Sonia, the number's 2,532. Wanted to make sure I had that for you. So, Jenny Simpson, HHSC. Judge Spisha was wonderful to send out a jurisdiction residence letter that had a link to a survey that HHSC is doing with the Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health. They're disseminating the survey out. It's focused on those external barriers to discharging, releasing individuals who are on extended 46B commitments. So I would really encourage you, if you've seen that jurisdiction residence letter, please click on that survey link, forward it on to colleagues also. We'd really love to get it out there and get a good sample so we do have an understanding of both what those barriers are, but what we can do better as well. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, terrific. We are to the end of our meeting. Thank you all so much for coming. More importantly, thank you for the work that you do. I mean, this room is so full of talented people who have chosen to engage in this area, which can be a challenging area to work in. And there's so much that needs to be done. So thank you for using your considerable talent in this field and doing it above and beyond your day jobs. And Judge, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Well, good. So we'll see everybody at the summit. I said October earlier, the first week of November. Hopefully you'll be there. If you are a commission member and didn't sign up and now you're on the wait list, please flag that for us so that we can hopefully make sure that you get a place. And then finally, we're looking at holding our 2023 meetings in January. January 26th is the tentative date, and then April 12th. We're going to try something different for our fall meeting. We're going to hold it in connection with the summit. So we will either hold it just before, in the middle of, somehow as part of the summit, so that if you're coming for the summit, you can come for the commission meeting and hopefully enjoy both at the same time so we don't take you away from home for too long. Okay, anything else? All right, thanks everybody, we're adjourned.